Grind don't stop. Grind don't stop. Grind don't stop. Grind don't stop. Grind don't stop.
Hi everyone. Welcome to Chewed Gum. Yeah, we were in the club for a little longer than normal tonight. That was fun.
We have to get our game on. I feel like it's not even hosting a show on the line if you don't get to have a little like dance party in a room by yourself, staring at the webcam, waiting for the show to begin, you know?
Oh, hell yeah. I haven't listened to house music since I was in college, and then suddenly I started doing this show, and now I listen to house music once a week. And that's really the big experience for me in doing this show. Welcome to Chewed Gum. Today is March 19th. And we have Erika with us today, and I'm so excited. So we want to encourage everyone to call. We have the phone lines we are getting some calls in. I'm so excited. But we do have some other lines open. So you can call at 720-619-2288, and we can talk about all things purity culture and sex-related things. And actually, Erika, you have a very different area of this whole sphere, and I need you to tell me more about it, especially because you have a degree in, is it like research with primates? Like, what's happening?
Gosh, man. So let me tell you about the perspective that when Jimmy pitched this show, right? And he was like saying, yeah, it's going to be, the perspective that we're looking at is like, purity culture. And I don't know if you ever heard of like the chewed gum thing and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm in, because what I'm going to do is come in and offer a perspective from the natural world, right? Human evolution, your natural world's matriarchal or egalitarian systems, and why the situation that unfortunately we find ourselves straddled with, that is very much not egalitarian, even here in the West, where things are still, especially culturally speaking, like pretty patriarchal. It's like why that's not the natural state of things, and why it probably shouldn't be. So my hope is to offer that perspective. My background is I got my my BSA, like my undergraduate degree in I was like pre-vet track, so it was like animal science and stuff like that. Then I got my master's in primatology, for lack of a better term. So I love talking about all of the different social systems that other primates have, because, wow, wouldn't you know it, it's not all polygynous with an alpha male at the helm. In fact, primates are super varied. And it's an awesome case study looking especially at the great apes, because weirdly enough, or the apes in general, every ape seems to have a different, like, mating system and social system and means by which they remove conflict from the groups, right? Like, I know that we're going to be talking about bonobos all the time on this channel, because bonobos, as I'm sure you know, are like these really bizarre matriarchal co-dominant apes that we are just as closely related to as we are to chimpanzees. And whenever they need to solve something, they do it sexually. They don't beat the crap out of each other. They have sex, and we share just as much DNA with them as we do with apes. So why are we pretending like it's like the whatever patriarchal system is the natural way of things, when we have another relative who we're just as close to that couldn't be further from that? Right. So that's what I'm offering here.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited about it. Like, all of this is so different than like the kind of, I mean, it is and it isn't, because I was going to say it's different than the research that I would read, but it really kind of isn't, because you're just observing behaviors of animals of one kind or another. And I think this is going to be so interesting. I'm so
I
excited.
want to know like your background though. Tell me where you're coming from. I want to know what two angles we're bringing to the table tonight as we're waiting for all of those people who are definitely going to call in, right? Who'll maybe come to your house. Call in.
We actually have 4 calls waiting, so we have some people ready to go. I'm excited.
Wonderful.
But so my background is I am a sex coach and a sex educator. I'm currently getting my ASEX certification in education, and right now I do that on like social media, and I'm starting to book one-on-one too. So if anyone ever wanted to book one-on-one with me, you can do that through my Instagram. And so I'll be doing one-on-one coaching and coaching stuff. But I've been studying for the past almost 4 years, and it took me on a crazy different route I did not expect. I ended up on a reality show called The Circle, and I brought my vulva pillow on there.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
oh yeah. And so now I just am trying to spread the good word to the masses on my socials for now. And yeah, that's kind of, I guess that's mostly my spiel. I mean, I grew up in like a pretty regular like Roman Catholic household. I didn't get like sex education from. My dog just like traveled underneath my dresser. I've never seen her do that before. That was wild. Anyway, sorry. That was so distracting. I was like, what is she doing? I was in a Roman Catholic household. Geez. And I didn't have sex education in school. I did, but it was like, wear a condom. And like, that was it. And like, my parents didn't really have conversations about that at home either. So when I was in my 20s, like I was like 27, and I learned the difference between a vulva and a vagina for the first time. And I was like, this is crazy that I'm almost 30 and I didn't know that. And lo and behold, I was very far from alone. And even like a week or two ago, we had someone call who was in her 60s, and she just learned that on the call that day. And, you know, it's how could we know unless we were seeking out that information? So that whole, the whole experience learning all of that really changed my life and like blew open this whole door of chaos. And now here we are, and we talk about all these things all day long, and it's really fun. And I also,
it's so necessary, right? Because it's necessary. There's like a complete hole in a lot of people's lives with regard to, and a lot of women's lives, so like who don't, who they're not taught in any facet of whether it's school or at the home or in their local community, like what is actually going on with them, right? I mean, we've got it better here in the West than a lot of places. Like I do field work in Kenya every summer. I have been for the past several summers, and they've done this really incredible outreach. Some of like the local communities that we visited, not Westerners, but like it's coming internally from Kenyans, you know, and they've been like, all right, like it's time to let the public know like what menstruation is, so that young women don't feel ashamed of like menstruation, which is just a completely normal standard part of like puberty and growing up and things like that for a lot of people. And I remember hearing that and being like, oh my gosh, you know, first of all, that's horrible. And then I thought like, I was like, oh my gosh, like the fact that they're not taught that, right? Like sometimes they just have to figure it out for themselves. But then it's also like, is that really that far off from what's going on here? Right? Like we don't teach a whole lot. Like it's not necessary in a lot of our schools, not necessary in the sense that we don't require it. Sex education, which is like actually so scary, because they're, you know, you've got a lot of young people who are growing up, they're menstruating for the first time, they're having all of these hormonal urges and you know, surrounded, inundated with sex and sex imagery, and they have no idea what to do with all of that. That's got to be so scary.
And it is, and it's crazy because we have the actual numbers now, and we know that states in the US that are not given comprehensive, accurate sex education are states that are higher in teenage pregnancy. They are higher in STIs. And the groups that are not taught sex education are comprehensive and medically accurate sex education. Those groups have sex earlier in life than the ones that do. And so it's when you know that, it's sort of like, what is the point then of not teaching people? And we know also that for, this was a study done with heterosexual couples, and specifically like kind of in discussion with the women who are in heterosexual relationships and have conversations with their partner about their sex lives have a they reported 50% of them reported feeling satisfied with their sex life. That number went down to 9. Yeah, and even that's not that high, but the number goes down to 9%. 9% if they don't talk about for the people who don't talk about their sex lives at all. So like even that is like we treat it, when you treat something as being so like secret and bad and we can't talk about it, it drastically affects our experience of it in like every sense, from the safety aspect and from like the pleasure aspect. But I almost forgot. I have to remind everybody that you can also do super chats for this show, and it's an amount of $5 or more, and we will read those at the end of the show. I almost forgot. I was like, oh no. But yeah, we have callers now. Should we pick someone up?
Yeah, I want to say first, I completely empathize. I feel like every time I host over on Skeptic, I'm always like, that was a great show, except for the fact that I've never brought up. It's like, great, fantastic. I'll be better next time, I promise. So it is what it is.
We're here to entertain, and there's only so much we can do. You know,
there's only so much we can do.
Exactly.
There's only
there's only so much. Okay, so actually there is one call that I think would be amazing because you're here, and this is like the perfect call specifically for you. And it's from a man named Bill, and it's about explaining evolution to his theist wife. Do you want to take that call?
Wow. Oh, of course. Okay. I mean, goodness. Yeah, okay. I'm listen, Bill, you knew I was going to be on tonight. You were like, I'm bringing up evolution on the sex education show. I'm in the purity culture show, but I will answer it, but I'm going to do it I'm going to keep it thematically appropriate.
I love it. Hi, Bill. Are you there?
Bill, do we have you on the line?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I had you muted with my cheek here. I was ready for you, Erika. But hello to you both. I have kind of a two-part question for you. So the first part is I've been watching all of your guys' content for so long, and it took me probably a year-ish to deconstruct my faith. And I kind of did it just watching YouTube and working through all my stuff. And I never really talked to my wife about it much. So she's still a theist. I'm an atheist. And she doesn't know that I'm an atheist. So that's one thing, is how to come out to her as an atheist. But then also the second part of my question is she grew up very Catholic school, whole 9 yards. And I like to watch a lot of documentaries, and one of the ones I was watching was on evolution, and she's like, well, how do they know all this stuff? And like, after watching you, Erika, and Forrest, and I was like, my head exploded. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all the details, and I was so excited, but I had too many ideas coming out of my head at once, and I just started talking, and it just kind of glazed her over. So I was just wondering, how I can slowly introduce her to stuff. And, I think, kind of what I had happen when I was growing up was, God did everything. So you didn't have to explain it, or you didn't have to investigate anymore. And I think that's kind of where she is. So that's basically what I'm looking for.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, so I think we can tackle this question in two parts. I've got the evolution part, and hopefully my wonderful co-host here will be able to tackle the coming out to your wife as an atheist part. So I can, do you want to go first? You want me to? What do we have a preference here?
I'm sorry.
You can go first.
I'll go first. Okay, I can go first. Well, I think that's actually appropriate because, I harp on this a lot on my channel, right? But I'm not of the opinion that evolution, necessarily has to contradict an individual's faith or anything like that. I'm very clear on that. Now, for some people, when you go down that road, right, that's where it inevitably ends. But I have a great many people who I know who are religious and accept evolution in the ancient age of the earth in every aspect of conventional science that you can imagine. And from their perspective, their spirituality is like a personal thing that doesn't have to intrude on the work that they do, right? So like the people in my department of biological anthropology who are religious, right? They do phenomenal work. The spirituality doesn't get in the way. They keep them non-overlapping magisteria, as it were. So the first and foremost is that you can accept those two things side by side. And if she's Catholic, all the more reason, since if memory serves, the current Pope is quite progressive with regard to that in particular, accepting God as guiding evolution or setting it in motion or something along those lines. Now, as far as like presenting the concept and providing support for the concept, right? I always start with, the very basic prediction of evolutionary theory, right? Which is, if evolution is true, you should see morphologic and genotypic change over geologic time and contemporary time. So is that what we see? And indeed, when you look to the fossil record, you can pick any lineage out there. You can look at the hominins, you can look at proboscideans, you can look at cetaceans, you can look at tetrapods, you can look at birds as descending from theropod dinosaurs, right? Pick any of them, and what you're going to see is morphologic change, so change in the physical characteristics of the critter over geologic time. And that acquisition is going to be slow, and every single intermediate is in and of itself going to be fit for its environment, right? Like it's going to be well suited for the area in which it lives, right? So if we're seeing slow morphologic change over geologic time in the fossil record, what we would expect is that the current biodiversity that we see today, critters that are alive and inhabiting our world as we live in the modern era, to reflect that, genetically and morphologically speaking. And what we see is exactly that, right? The closest relative of birds, when we look at what we would traditionally consider reptiles, it's not lizards and it's not snakes. Genetically, they're closest to crocodiles and turtles, the other archosaurs, which, that serves to reflect their ancestry as like a theropod dinosaurs, archosaurs themselves, or humans, right? Our closest living relative is chimpanzees and bonobos. Those are the two guys we share the most DNA with. And simultaneously, and this is the one that I feel like absolutely everybody forgets to mention, is that chimps and bonobos also call us their closest living relative. They're not closer to gorillas. They are closest to humans, genetically speaking, right? So all of these relationships that we see bearing out in the fossil record reflect in modern day genetics and morphology as well. So when I'm like talking with people who are doubtful of evolution or something along those lines, the first thing that I always say is like, okay, like here's the basic prediction. Does reality match that? And everywhere you look, the answer is yes. Whether it's seeing novel genes appear in ice fish, right? Or watching populations of bacteria evolve novel characteristics, or watching a population of mosquitoes living in the environment of the tunnels of the London subway evolve their own unique characteristics. It is absolutely everywhere. And to quote Theodosius Dobzhansky, right, who famously was a theist, right? Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. So that's where I would go with your wife first, is setting out the basic premise, since you want to do this so slowly, right? Is setting out the basic premise, and as you watch these documentaries together, you can just remark that it's like, oh wow, that's so cool, right? They're showing bird evolution from dinosaurs. I wonder if they have any fossils that support that. And then you just Google feathered dinosaur fossil, and you're going to get a zillion of them where the feather imprints are literally in the rock, which this should not happen unless they share a common ancestor, right? So is that helpful?
Yeah. No, that's definitely a good path to go. I appreciate that.
Wonderful.
That was fair. I was learning a lot in all of that. I was like, damn, if you were talking slower, I would have been taking notes, but it was hopeless at that point. I'll watch it on.
Luckily it's recorded.
Yeah, exactly. I'll watch it back.
I will never talk slower. Don't even bother asking. It won't happen. You're doomed to have to rewatch it.
So funny. I love it.
You can put me on 25 speed. That's the best you'll get.
Yes, exactly. So, Bill, in regards to having the conversation with your wife, what is your if you were to imagine how the conversation would go, what is your fear in her response? Like, what are you scared that her response is going to be?
So I already have like a naturally avoidant personality. Like if there's a problem, I'll try to avoid it as much as I can, which is why I'm in this situation already. But she's not, she doesn't go to church very often, Easter and Christmas. You know, so it's not like she's super devout, and you know, I don't want this to sound condescending, but part of my path got me really sad when I like lost my faith. You know, it's like a security blanket was taken away from me or something like that. And I almost don't want her to have to go through that. And I know that sounds so condescending, but like I just don't want her to hurt. But I also want, you know, to live, you know, true with her, obviously. But I also, you know, want her to know what I would call the truth or whatever as well. So I guess my fear is for her to be, you know, take it hard. But then her family is much more devout than she is. So like, then we become the black sheep and everything else. So like, we also have a 3-year-old daughter. So like, I know that questions of things will be coming soon. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, so I don't have a specific fear because, you know, I don't think that it would be because she's not so devout. It's not like it'd be a relationship ending thing. You know, we've been married for 8 years, so it's not like that, but it's definitely, I guess, you know, it's just hard to come out to anyone. I mean, it should be easier for my wife. You know, that's kind of where I'm coming from, I guess.
Yeah. I will say, I don't think that you saying that you want to protect her from feeling that like kind of bursting bubble. I don't think that sounds condescending at all. It's kind of like when you have to talk about your, you know, Santa with a kid. It's like at a certain point they're going to ask a question and the only answer is, well, Santa's not real, and you don't want to have to do that, but it's also the truth. And, you know, I don't think that that's condescending whatsoever. And I think the intention in bringing that conversation to her is really important here, because you're not having the conversation with her trying to convert her. And I think that that's a really important part of it. If you start a conversation with her, which one of the things that I think is really important in any serious conversation that anyone ever has is, for the love of all things, never say, we need to have a talk. Because that is immediate diarrhea fuel. It will spin any person out. We can't do that. But I think like some of the things that I've told people to say instead are like, I want to touch base about something, or I had this, like, I've been having this thought and I really wanted to share it with you. I can't believe I haven't shared it with you yet. And come from a place of wanting to share and wanting to feel close to her. And I mean, that's what it sounds like the intent really is. Like, this is a person who knows you better than most, I'm sure. And so to have something that is really big and kind of like central to who you are and your belief system be something that you aren't sharing with her right now is probably a really strange experience. And I think if you're bringing it to the table with, and you can even say this, and this is sort of can be a sort of like therapist-y way to phrase it, but it helps sometimes. My dog is snoring. I'm sorry. But it helps sometimes to even just say, I want to have a conversation with you with the full intention of just sharing everything that's going on with me, because you're really important to me. And with the full intention of having like a loving conversation with you. And I think if you go into the conversation in that way, that will help. Because I think when you're, it almost, the way that you're describing the conversation almost reminds me of the way that other people talk about coming out, like with their sexuality preferences, and that it's, you know, it's almost like that same level, not same, but a similar level of like vulnerability of, this is something that is actually kind of important to me. And I want to have the maintain the level of closeness that we have had by sharing this really important thing with you. But you're also not trying to take something away from her. So I think in that conversation, just saying, I want to share this with you because it's just been a big life change for me. And I experienced, you know, you can even share, I experienced this, you know, loss of a safety blanket, and it was really hard. And I feel still like very supported in my choice. I think this is still the way that I feel. And, you know, I don't want to like put into words how you feel, but if this is aligned with how you feel, something along the lines of like, I want to support you in whatever you still want to pursue with religion, but really have a think about where your boundaries are with that. So for instance, I'm atheist. My parents are Catholic, and so some of the boundaries I've drawn with them is that they're very interested in like the history of Jesus and all that, whatever. So that's fine. But my boundary with them is that if you want to share that stuff with me, that's totally fine. But I'm going to engage with it in the way that I want to. I'm not going to engage with it like crying like it's a miracle. It's not going to happen. And so if you don't want that reaction from me, don't share that with me. So that's a boundary that I've had with them. And especially when it comes to having a child too, I think going into that conversation knowing you need to have an idea of what you are comfortable doing, what your boundaries are in terms of having those conversations with your daughter. And it might be a situation where you say, you know, my belief is not really what it once was. And so when it comes time for our daughter to have these questions, I think we can come to an agreement about how we want to share with her. It could be, you know, mom it feels really strongly that this is how things are. Dad's not really sure, or dad doesn't really feel the same, but you have the freedom to decide. And that's really exciting. You can explore all of these things and take it from sort of like a more collaborative approach. But I think for you, because this is something that is, it sounds like it really weighs on you that this isn't something you've shared with her and it's not really integrated into the rest of your life. It's important to, before you have that conversation, consider where your boundaries are, and then do your best to be as collaborative as you possibly can. I also don't think I don't know what your family dynamic is like. I don't think it's totally necessary to share it with your extended family unless it's something that, you know, you feel like you really have to, or your wife really feels like, you know, it's going to come up. We need to think of a plan. But I don't really think, unless you really feel called to, if that's going to cause like a complicated relationship with those family members, and in reality, it doesn't really come up that much, and you can kind of skate by with, you know, everyone else having a conversation and you sort of taking the back seat, maybe that's a good approach. I don't know if that was, I think I gave you some actionable things there, but let me know if I didn't.
That was great advice. I really do appreciate that answer.
Alyssa, I want to run something by you that I was like kind of thinking in my head while you were talking. Cause like, I totally, that was phenomenal advice. That was great. And there was so much stuff in there that Bill could actually act upon, as you said, actionable moves that he can make. What do you think about the idea of being like, hey, like when he goes to his wife with this, being like, hey, you know, I'm open, and this is all going to depend if Bill actually is open. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but like, I'm open to having these kinds of discussions. Like maybe we can together look and test the veracity of some of the beliefs that either of us have, right? Like, and turn it into like an exploratory thing that they can do together as a couple to come to a conclusion that maybe they end up agreeing upon, maybe they don't.
I think you would have to be really cautious about that, because you're asking somebody to explore deconstructing when they might not want to. And I think what always is like sort of the centerpiece of the way that theists operate is faith, and you can't argue with that. Like that's sort of where like even with my parents, at a certain point I'll say, well, how do you know that? How could you possibly know that? And well, I have faith that, and I just know. I'm like, okay, well then that's sort of where I'm like, okay, well then we have to agree to disagree, because faith and spirituality in that way, I don't feel like I want to overstep into if that does something for them and they're not hurting anybody, not my business. So I think even for Bill, for you and your wife, I don't know if I would suggest taking that approach unless she seems interested. Because it almost feels like you're creating like an unsolicited deconstruction when she might be like fine with how she feels. But now who knows? Maybe that'll change.
It sounds like kind of entrapment a little bit.
Yeah.
But
and you
never know.
you know?
Yeah. you never know. You might have that conversation with her and she might say, maybe not in that conversation, but later on, she might say, I actually have some questions. So I'm curious, like, what led you to this path? And I think if you just continue to go at that conversation with a tone of like curiosity and approaching it with just wanting to share, wanting to feel like you're on the same page with this person that you really love and care about and have built a life with now, I think that'll bring you to like a more successful place and prevent feeling like you have to debate each other if that's not something that you enjoy. And if you do enjoy that, I fully encourage debate nights, but I don't know if that's really going to go very well, Bill.
Well, that was great advice. Thanks for your answers.
Of course,
Awesome.
no problem. You can call us back. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah, keep us updated. I'm curious
Thanks.
to see
Have a
how
good
all of this matches out. Best of luck.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, cool. That was so great. Oh, Bill, I hope he figures out how he wants to approach that. That is so tough.
That's hard to navigate.
That's really hard.
When he was asking about that, I was like, okay, like, here's what I would do. But then when you were giving the advice, which is like that's way more your arena than mine, I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely the way that you should navigate it. I'm a little bit more bullheaded, I think. So
well, you know what? I think it also, like, conflict resolution is really challenging, especially because we don't get taught conflict resolution. Like, we don't get encouraged to learn how to have healthy conflict resolution unless you seek out that skill. And especially like in my family dynamic, our conflict resolution skills were like never really that great. We were like all very like defensive with each other, which is, it was just sort of a learned behavior. And so that was
it's natural to feel defensive. Like, it's been shown that like the same area of your brain lights up when you're presented with information that contradicts a position you have, that lights up when you feel like physical pain. So it's natural you have to learn these like you said, like it's a learned behavior, but it's also innate. So it's like, we really have to fight for those conflict resolution skills that you were just talking about.
I didn't know that it lights up the same part of your brain.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And that also is very validating to hear, because sometimes when you hear something that you feel defensive about, I'm like, I am literally fighting for my life.
You're like, all right, I see now we're picking violence, right? Like we're just gonna have a physical confrontation right here, right? But it's like, we hold these things here, so it kind of makes sense. And it's, you really have to fight against your instinct on that one, where it's like, okay, like they're coming at you with an alternative perspective. They're not trying to tear you down. There's not a pack of wolves chasing you. Like, let's de-escalate and come at this from a reasonable perspective. But gosh, is that hard to do?
It's so hard. It's so hard. All right. We have some other calls that are lined up. One of them is from Jolene, and I am interested in what she has, and she's been waiting so patiently. So I'm going to pull Jolene on the line. Hi, Jolene. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Hi. How's it going? Yes. You're live with me and Erika. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good.
Wonderful.
Okay, awesome. What is your question or your topic this evening?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about patriarchy and religious institutions, but specifically the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Because I call myself a Catholic, but not in the way that most people think a Catholic is.
I mean, I think that's okay. It's interesting because, I'm actually not even the person who knows like the Bible inside out and knows the whole like church system inside out. And so I can give you like to the best of my ability and my perspective of it. I think what I'm curious, because I know that there are stories of the Bible that as it's evolved have fallen off, and some of those have had some varying views of women. And I know that I'll be honest, this is not any research that I've done in any academic setting. This is purely deep diving on Google and such. But I do remember reading that there's like stories of Adam having a wife before Eve, and her name was Lilith, and now she's like a big part of the pagan religion because she was she didn't really want to be obedient to Adam. And so she was kind of like, F this, I don't want to do this. And was condemned to hell and was now like the queen of demons. And that's how she's now memorialized in the Catholic Church. I'm going to pull up our little YouTube stream too, because I'll see if anybody has any corrections for me on that, because I'm pretty sure that that's how that story goes. But there's a lot of really interesting things about the way that women are portrayed, especially in the Bible. Like even just the Virgin Mary being a virgin is confusing to me, and having her be, I think they estimated her being like 14 years old. So just like some things like that feel a little bit confusing to me personally. And so I don't know. I think that along the line, as the Bible was developing, some men had a plan to sort of continue to shape it in such a way that it represented women in the way that it does. But I'm curious also, Jolene, what your like how you've maybe reinterpreted that and how you've created like a better or more comfortable view of your religion now.
So if I may, I'm also extremely interested in that. But Jolene, it sounds a little bit like your phone might be tumbling in a rock tumbler or something like that. Are you by chance? Are you by chance like walking around outside with like a windy day or maybe something like that? I just want to make sure that we want to hear you as clearly as possible.
How about now?
That's much better. Much better.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. What was the question again?
Oh, I was curious about how you've sort of like how you have changed your perception of the religion now.
Okay. Well, I'd actually consider myself a spiritual Catholic in the sense that I hold on to some of the more spiritual beliefs of the faith and reject more of the how do I put it nicely? The questionable aspects of the church.
Yeah.
Like this is probably going to be controversial.
No. Go ahead. I'm so sorry. I was musing about something in my brain, and then I was like, oh, I want to get this out, but I want to make sure that we completely hear your perspective here before I take us down a rabbit hole.
Like, this is going to be controversial for some people, but I kind of view Mary as like a mother goddess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So, I mean,
do you
sorry,
Alyssa,
go ahead,
you
Erika.
want to go first on this? You want to go? Yeah, hey,
no.
I can go ahead and talk. You want it on you. All right.
People have heard me enough.
I'm champing at the bit for one particular portion of the question that you asked, right? Which is like, what are the potential like patriarchal origins of Catholicism? And like to speak from a perspective of, the evolution of society and civilization from like a previous hunter-gatherer organization, which lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Like Homo sapiens, our species, existed in a hunter-gatherer setting for approximately 290,000 years. And if it's anything like the other hunter-gatherer societies that exist today, then it was probably pretty egalitarian, right? Like you didn't have the structural sort of, patriarchal organization that you tend to see in early city-states and in early pastoralist societies, things like that. And the reason that's been proposed for this is because humans, typically speaking, right, we form these really tight-knit relationships, and a lot of the time these relationships are along family lines, right? So like women are really close socially with other women, their aunts, their mothers, their grandmothers, their nieces, their daughters, things like that. And in a hunter-gatherer society where everybody's living together, right, everyone has easy access to the other women in their lives, to their family members and things of that nature. And when you move to a pastoralist society or even a sedentary like agriculture where you're planting and you're staying in one area, there's this really interesting shift that we see even in current societies that kind of bridge that gap. And I'm not trying to say that the current societies exist as like these earlier versions. It's just they might have something to say about what some portions of these earlier versions might have looked like. But the idea basically goes that if you can separate, you know, a woman from the rest of her family, and you have these isolated pair bonds that are kept separate from the grandmothers, the aunts, the nieces, the daughters, things like that, that you can exert a much greater control, because by and large, on average, your average, you know, guy is going to be stronger than your average girl physically. And so because of that, the idea goes that once you can isolate, you know, a woman, then you can exert a greater amount of power. And so with agricultural society comes the city state and comes, quote unquote, the patriarchy, right? And so early religion is born out of this as well. And what's really fascinating from a Christian perspective is that early on, if memory serves, and I get a lot of this from videos that I've seen like years ago now from like Josh Bowen, like Digital Hammurabi and things like that. But early on, God was not like an individual, like Yahweh or El was not like an individual figure, but there was also like the feminine with him, which was like, I think it's Asherah, and the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Asherah who was like a goddess that was alongside in like a monolatrous sense. So like over time you have this first the perpetuation of like the you know, man as like the dominant force of this duo, of this dyad, but the woman is still there, she's still present, she's still exerting power over the people. And then eventually Asherah just kind of disappears from the narrative entirely, which is really, really interesting, because that's right around the time that you know, that's proposed to be when the Hebrews are starting to put pen to paper on things like Job and Genesis and a lot of those earlier books of the Old Testament. So you see this really strong shift over into favoring the patriarchal male figure who is alone in charge of the religion, and he alone exists without any contemporaries, female or otherwise, which is interesting to think about, because that happened so recently in time compared to not just other religions that would have been polytheistic with many men and women in deity positions, but the 290,000 years worth of egalitarian structure that human society had existed under. So like you think about this idea of patriarchy as institution, and like at least my understanding, and I think there's a pretty strong case made for this, this seems to be a pretty recent invention. And because of that, I don't think that there is a case to be made that this is like the natural state of things, which I think you tend to hear a lot from, I don't know how much from Catholics, but speaking from like a Protestant upbringing, where it's like, okay, you know, God made Adam first, right? He was the first one to be made. Eve was taken from his rib. And as a result, she's the helpmeet. She's subservient, you know, and that's just the way that things are. And initially it's a pair of two, a man and a woman, just the two of them together. No female relatives, no male relatives, no family, no village. It's just the two of them. And from them, everything else comes to pass. And so I guess I'm just kind of musing here on like the idea that this has been set in stone for so long since the dawn of time is just completely unfounded from an anthropological and primatological perspective. So I hope that was at least interesting. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting. I was gonna say there was something else about it's interesting to even see, like, to know that it has not always been that same way, and yet we treat it like it is the only way, is so interesting. And I think
checked
that
so we're good. We're good. I was right on the name.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, I don't know. I think it's always interesting too to just consider like who it benefits to have these stories be so heavily patriarchal, and it certainly doesn't benefit us. And so I think, I don't know, there's a lot about institutional religions that are just like one massive power play. And so especially when you're going to talk about the gender roles within them, it all just is a big power play to put women in one specific role so that men can kind of take the reins. I started watching The Handmaid's Tale recently, and that's all I can think about now. It's like, that's all I can think about is like, if they were given free reign, is this what they would do? It's so scary.
Well, it's really interesting to me because like in a natural setting, right? And it's often put forward that it's like, oh, it's the man's job to dominate the woman, and like he's in charge. It's an alpha position, and like this is peddled on MGTOW forums and incel forums and like all sorts of different stuff. That's like this is how it is supposed to be, and this is how it was. And it's like, well, no, from a historical perspective, this is a recent arrival. But if we look into like deeper into the past, into like our closest relatives, like other primates and things of that nature, even in species that are ridiculously dimorphic, right? Like what comes to mind is like gelada baboons, where males are like twice the size of females, are really big and imposing. And the way that they're structured is polygynous, right? It's a male, and then he's got this group of females that lives in like this multi-level society, and he is females, and these females kind of hang out around him. But where the paradigm that we kind of try to adapt to modern day goes horrifically wrong, at least if you're an incel, is that the females in his group will regularly completely oust him, because together, even though they're half the size of him, together they're like 5 times the size of him, right? Because there's 5 or 10 of them. And so what they can do is they can oust the male that is in their group and basically say, no, like we've had enough. And what those societies look like is the males are extremely chill, because they don't want to piss off the group of females that they live with. They can't afford to. They get kicked out. Even more extreme versions exist in mandrills, where you've got groups of 800 plus females and their dependent offspring. And then once every year, I think their breeding season is once a year, a male will come in and like try to solicit, the males will fight with one another, to try to gain the attention of these females. And the males are like 5 times the size. It doesn't matter. Right? Primatologists have recorded females, like groups of these females, when they are treated unfairly or harshly by these males that come in, even if they're really, nice looking males with these beautiful color patterns, they can mob him and kill him. Right? And so this whole story starts with isolating females from family members and from kin groups. And it's crazy, but you see this even off the small scale recapitulated in abuse structures, right? Like what's the first thing abusers do is they isolate an individual from their family and from their friends, which is, it's spooky to think about, but like this behavior is really, really ancient. And these power structures are incredibly fluid. And at the grand scheme of things, this idea of like a patriarchy is very new, at least within apes and within primates in general.
Yeah. Jolene, I have a question actually.
Okay.
So in traditional institutional religions, many of them sort of have like almost consequence. I mean, not almost. They have some level of consequence for not adhering to exactly the story is as exactly it's the way that it's being told. Does that even make sense? In the way that it's being told. So you understand what I'm saying. That was not the right grammar, but we got it out. Do you feel like how do you feel about that when constructing, sort of like your own belief system within the larger institutional part of it? Like, for instance, like in Catholicism, you have only one God. If you worship anybody else, then, that's a sin and you can go to hell and, etc. Do you fear any of those consequences, or do you feel like you have a different perspective on those as well? I'm just curious.
No, I don't really fear all that stuff. I actually don't take a lot of what the Catholic Church teaches seriously about a lot of things.
Yeah, fair.
I'm also trans, so the Catholic Church is not very cool with that.
Yeah. Well, I think as long as it's worked for you in a way where it feels supportive and not oppressive, then I think that, I think it's okay. I feel like my perspective of belief systems is like the same as it is with really anything, is as long as you're not hurting anybody. Actually, my perspective of people's belief systems and religions is the same perspective I have on people's kinks. If everyone is having a good time, it's consensual, and you're not hurting anybody, then by all means, full speed ahead. I don't mind. And so I think like if it gives you peace and it gives you comfort and you feel supported in those communities, especially if you can find communities that like sort of align closer with the type of religion that you want to practice, then that's even better. But there also is like a whole other side of it where I think, there's so many levels to spirituality and so many different types of spirituality that you can kind of like, a la carte. Like, I feel like you can sort of like a la carte do your own thing and figure out what works for you. Because at the end of the day, like we're all trying to figure out like all of these rules that exist within these institutional religions is so that you don't get like kicked out at the end of it and like, sent to hell. But at some point, I'm like, I feel like everyone that I know is a sinner in one way or another. So if they're really adhering to these rules, we're all fucked anyway. So, I kind of feel like we're all going to do our best to be good and honest people and be kind and just like hope for the best. That's what I'm thinking. And I think that, if, like I said, if you're finding support in the way that that works best for you, then that's amazing, and I'm happy for you in that way. And yeah, so I don't know if you have anything else that you want to discuss or add, but we also have we have full lines, so we can also. I know it's crazy.
I just have
Sorry, go ahead.
I just have one more thing. Just one more thing
Sure.
to say. I just wish I had learned consent at a much younger age because I have autism, and that would have saved me a lot of not being hurt.
Yeah. I 100% understand, and I am hoping for better resources, especially in sex education for people who have autism or who are autistic, because the communication model is a little bit different and could just be a little more elaborate, I think. And so I am hoping that that's something. I actually have been talking about this with a friend of mine who works with I can't remember what age group now. I don't think it's adults yet, but she works with people with autism, and she was talking about how they really need better sex education resources, just to have like a little bit more of like a specialized approach, and just like a little more specific would just be really helpful. And so I hope that resource can also become available, even if I have to make it myself. But consent is really important, and it's not discussed. Sorry, go ahead, Jolene. I cut you off.
I actually got this big book from the library for about sex and sexuality for people who are teens in their 20s, up to their 20s. So that's good.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it's called? Is that the name of the book?
Oh, I don't have it around me right now.
Okay. Well, if you ever want any book recommendations on any like anything sex or sexuality, you can DM me on Instagram, and I'll send you a whole list of them because I have plenty. And so if you're ever interested in anything sexuality, or even just like sex education books that I think are really helpful, I can send you a whole bunch of them.
Thanks. Sounds good.
You're welcome. All right, Jolene, have a good rest of your night.
You too.
Bye. Okay. So we have full lines, which, okay. So
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Do you want a, how are you feeling like you want a spicy call, or are you wanting a more chill call? Because we have some spicy calls.
Well, define
I'll be honest.
You're the main host. You have to choose. It's not, hey, I'm along for the ride. You're the driver. I'm managing the Spotify playlist and giving directions.
I am not. I'm the kind of person where if someone argues with me, it's 50-50 on if I'll cry. So, so this could go really poorly. And the good news is I can just hang up the phone.
You're in charge. You finger on the button. So if you want to bring something controversial, let's do it. Let's do it.
Oh God, I'm so stressed about this. Okay, so I think there is one call that oh man. I'm like scanning my brain.
I have bloodlust in my heart. I used to debating on the internet is one of my favorite things to do. So if you want to bring someone on here, I will. Ooh, I'm ready. I will politely and with civility bring what I got. So I'm happy to do a debate. I'm happy to not. But you're in the driver's seat. It's nice to co-host because I don't have to pick the calls.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up John, who is an atheist, wants to know why patriarchy is a prison and why he thinks it is not. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a spicy call. So I'm going to pull him on now. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, John. How's it going? Me? Yes, we can hear you.
Can hear you.
I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. Okay, so what? John, did we lose you?
Yeah, the phone keeps cutting off. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. We just wanted to know what you wanted to talk about today.
Well, the title. Okay, I got to give you first a heads up. Okay, I got a GED. English.
Okay.
English is my second language also. Okay. So
Okay.
these big words, fancy words, are, in my opinion, not so good. I want to have an honest conversation. Okay, that's all I want.
Wonderful.
And when you say patriarchy is a prison, what do you mean?
So what we mean by that is the way that the pretty much every system in the world, especially I would say everywhere, but in the westernized world especially, is greatly affected by prioritizing the comfort, wants, and needs of the men in it. So many times we can see that women are getting paid less. We can see that they're not being treated equally. And it also affects the way that men live their lives as well. They're not able to freely express their emotions and their feelings. They're, at risk of being told that they are insensitive or whatever. There's a lot about the way that the patriarchy presents a lifestyle that is really oppressive. It makes it so that the people who are living within a patriarchy are not able to freely express themselves in a way that they would like to for fear of being penalized or punished or ostracized or for the sake of using like a more like regular word, for fear of being made fun of and being shamed. And that shame is not acceptable. That's life-changing. That is life-altering. It ruins people's lives. So that, I feel like, is like a little baby version of why I think patriarchy is a prison. Erika, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that historically, by taking a perspective that one gender is superior or deserves to be in the leadership roles to the exclusion of the other, and that has been historically, at least with regard to agricultural society and onwards. There are a lot of, as Alyssa said, needs that get overlooked. There is an immense amount of suffering that is placed not just on the in charge gender, but the gender that is in charge as well, right? So like what we're advocating for is not a matriarchy, but we're advocating for an egalitarian society where the wants of everyone are heard and neither the masculine nor the feminine are debased and considered less than. So what I would say is that patriarchy is a prison because it hurts men and women and all those in between alike.
Okay, that was a lot there. I was trying to write things down while you were talking. You went from one thing, you went to a lot. Okay, the first thing is the first thing I would say is when you say it is just in the West, I don't believe so. Even in the desert,
it's definitely not.
Southeast Asia, it's there.
It's definitely not just
in Islam. In a Muslim country, it is there.
Yeah.
Men. Okay, it's not just the West; it's everywhere. Okay, that's the first thing I want to contradict you on that.
You're right.
Okay, it's everywhere. It's not just the Western world. Okay. Now,
I said that as well. I said it was.
Yeah.
I said that as well. It is worldwide, but I said mostly in Westernized cultures because that's what I know more about. Honestly, I didn't want to like speak on systems that I don't know enough about to say for sure that they are all worldwide patriarchy.
But we see it every day.
Yes.
We see that every day. We see it on YouTube. We see it on. I like watching the natural things like how apes go and so I just watch them and I try to learn from it. Okay, and I'm like 50 something years old. I grew up poor. I know what hardship is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now the second one you said is women get paid low. I mean that's been debated multiple times, and it has been debunked multiple times in the Western world. I don't know about
John,
the Asian part.
Is it okay if we take things one at a time, just for the sake of? I mean, I know we piled a lot on you.
Yeah.
I suppose the purpose was just to let you know where we stand, but I'd like to just get from the outset, from your perspective, just point blank. Would you say that the way that the system is structured, with being, in the sense that we would consider it to be patriarchal, right? Would you consider that a good thing, or is your argument that that's better than an alternative?
Well, my thing is patriarchy is what it is. It's what we came up to. Okay, that's it. It's just the way it is. It is just the way it is. So you mentioned a minute ago. Hey, let me finish. We both male and female benefit from it.
Okay, so let's back up for a second. You just said that is how it is, and that you watch a lot of documentaries with a lot of apes. So the fortunate part is that I'm a primatologist, so I study apes, and I study ape behavior, and I study dead apes, and I study human evolution from previous apes, and all sorts of good stuff. So I would assume that in your frequent amount of time watching nature documentaries, that you've watched a lot of chimpanzee behavior, right? Where you've got an alpha male who's in charge of the troop. Yeah. So humans are about 98.8% similar genetically to chimpanzees. We would agree with that, yes? We're very closely related to them. They reflect a lot of our nature.
Well,
would we agree with that?
Hold up. We do have some similarities. I would agree, but it's not like. Let me ask you this then: if you want to compare us to monkeys, where are the monkeys now? They're out there in the jungle. They didn't build no buildings. They didn't build no nothing.
So, John, I want to back it up though, because the argument that you were making is that we see patriarchy, right, male dominance in the natural world. And what I'm contending with you here is that our closest living relatives are chimpanzees, and they are another ape species called Panpaniscus, the bonobo. And bonobos are matriarchal. They have an alpha female that is in charge, and they are not nearly as violent as chimpanzees. They don't engage in patrols and intergroup aggression, or what we would call like a genocidal condition where they wipe out adjacent groups and assimilate neighboring females into their own group. They don't do any of that. Right, so they are significantly more peaceful, and they're led by an alpha female, actually more like a council, if you will, of alpha females. And so what I'll say with that is they are equally as genetically related to us as chimpanzees are. So we are, naturally speaking, just as related to a patriarchal ape group as we are to a matriarchal ape group. So to say that patriarchy is the natural condition is simply incorrect. Now, when we look to the other primates, we see many other examples of either co-dominance, female dominance, or male dominance, because the natural world is incredibly varied. When you back up and you look at other classes of mammals, it's the same thing. Sexual dimorphism is incredibly varied across the entire animal kingdom, and a study was released just last week that when you survey all of the mammals, it is actually equally, if not more common, that females are the larger sex when we're looking at males versus females. And that goes for social animals as it goes for solitary animals. And so what I'm trying to say is that the natural world is varied and human societies are varied. There is not a single way to structure a society. And I am of the opinion that the best way to structure society is the way that benefits the most amount of people, the most frequent amount of time, right? For lack of a better term, I'm messing it up a little bit there. And that would not be the patriarchal system that you see in chimpanzees, and it would also not be the matriarchal system that you see in bonobos. It would be an egalitarian system that benefits men and women and all those in between sufficiently to make sure that everyone gets their due. Does that make sense?
I kind of, but I would still say that if you want to compare us with monkeys, monkeys are still eating grass. Monkeys are out there in the woods. We built some. We built cities. We evolved a little bit more than monkeys. Okay? And then the patriarchy stood by it. It came up with it. Now here's my other thing. The way wait. Let me finish.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
I always let you talk all the way.
No,
Okay?
I agree.
Now,
Go
the
ahead.
patriarchy, I say that patriarchy, it benefits us both. Okay? Because for some reason, like, let's say if you want to go out with your hubby, with your boyfriend, all right? Even in the animal world, the male dominance is not just for what you said, oppressing females. No, it's for defense of the whole thing, of the group. Okay, when other monkeys try and grab the females, he stops them. Okay, that's and the females benefit from that because the females chose this monkey as their leader because I'm pretty sure he would say he's got better genes and stuff like that. That's why she mated with him. Okay.
So
now
John,
she's got an offspring that she has to spend.
That's true in some taxa, but that's not true in all taxa, which is the entire point that I was making earlier, which is that you see variations on the same theme in the animal kingdom. So when you're talking about these monkeys that have an alpha male, absolutely that exists in nature. Just as in nature, you see groups that are dominated by an alpha female, whether you're looking at ring-tailed lemurs or bonobos, right? You have pair bonded species where a single male and a single female defend their territory as a single mated pair. You see this in gibbons and in TD monkeys, and you have polyandrous monkeys, such as our marmosets or our tamarins, where two males will live with a single female and they take care of her every need. And you see polygynous species, which is the opposite, one male with multiple females, right? So you see variations on social system all across the animal kingdom. And the point that I'm trying to make is that there's more than one way to skin a cat here. And having a patriarchal system is not beneficial to everybody, and neither is having a purely matriarchal system. Right? You talk about how monkeys that don't have these systems haven't moved to our level. They're not as evolved, right? But human evolution was dominated by egalitarianism until the very recent past. And we certainly did a whole lot of evolution during that time.
I also just wanted to briefly mention that I understand what you're saying, that hypothetically the men would be protecting women, and that would be, I guess, the system that they form. But we live in a civilized society. I don't really need a man to like fist fight for me on a daily basis, but I do actually need to be paid fairly, and I need to be able to make choices about my own body when I would like to, and I need to be able to have the freedom to wear the things that I would like to, and not feel like when I think about the things that women are scared of, they are scared. If you do a survey and you ask a group of women what they are scared of, and you do a survey and you ask men what they are scared of, they're going to be very different things. If you ask a group of women what they're scared of getting hurt and they're getting killed, really. And many times not many times, women are the discrepancy in size is not in our favor because we are not in a civilized we are in a civilized society. So men are not defending women like that every day, but there are men who are extremely violent towards women and have extremely violent relationships towards women. And that's what women are scared of. And then on top of that, we are very likely to not be believed when those things are reported because the people that we are reporting them to are also men and they want to protect their fellow man. And so it's more than the physical aspect of it. It is this now allegiance between all of these other men too in a system that favors men and wants to prioritize their safety and their comfort over mine. And so, even a good example, I think, a very small but good example is I'm a sex coach. I'm a sex educator. So a lot of the things that I read about are related to sex education. So I know that there is a very large budget that goes to the use of Viagra, and it is covered by insurance. And Viagra is used to treat erectile dysfunction, which erectile dysfunction could also be, by the way, an indication of a lot of other things. It can even be an indication of a potential heart attack. So if in the event that anybody is listening and they are experiencing some ED, please investigate with like a cardiovascular testing of some kind. That's just an aside. But I know that those needs are going to be met for men. When they try to create that same medication for women, insurance didn't cover it. And that to me is really interesting because why would the pleasure of a man be prioritized over a woman wanting to also experience pleasure and desire and all of these things? And that's not going to be prioritized. It's not going to be covered by insurance, and they're going to have to figure out a different way around it. It's things like that. It's not just in the sense of wanting somebody to physically defend me. It's in every aspect of my life. Even in something as small as when I buy a shaving razor, like to shave my legs or whatever, it is significantly more expensive for a razor that is branded towards women because of something called the pink tax. They add an extra percentage because they're going to make my razor pink and they're going to market it towards women. But I could buy a better quality razor and spend a lot less money on it when it's marketed towards men. And so it's in every single aspect of our lives, men are being made more comfortable. Their needs are being prioritized. So I don't really care that if there was a fist fight, which if I'm being honest, was probably started by men anyway. I don't really give a crap that a man was going to defend me because they also probably started it. And at the end of the day, when I walk away from that fight, I still am going to see and feel the effects of the patriarchy in every aspect of my life, as does everybody else, including men.
That was a lot. I can't.
I know. I'm sorry.
Touch on everything.
I'm sorry.
That you said, okay. That's why I guess you would say patriarchy is a prison. That's why, because you got so much more other than patriarchy involved in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the patriarchy. Unless the matriarchy want to step up and play their game, it ain't gonna change. It is what it is. Men built this civilization. Men, okay? Men built
John,
this civilization.
That's also just
and
not
that's
true,
how
though.
it is.
Like
Yes,
I'm
it is.
sure, I'm sure you appreciate that. I'm sure. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. When you go out on a construction building, you look up how many men and how many females are in there building. Maybe
I don't
two,
know.
maybe
I think
5 out of 100.
Is that the end of the point?
Maybe
Because
2
you could do
out
the
of 5
same,
out of
you could do
100.
the same, John, you could do the same thing with any profession that's female dominated. You could say when you go in to get your blood drawn, how many
Yes.
phlebotomists are men? You could say how many
And that's why
doctors. You could say how many veterinarians are men, or how many pick any profession has a female domination.
male and females, that's why I say both benefit from it. Okay? That's why I say
Right, but
male
there's
and
a
female both benefit.
critical
But-
portion here, because the patriarchy that exists today is a muted version of the one that existed 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And the amount of female doctors and the amount of female veterinarians that exist today was not the same 50 or 100 years ago. There were very few because, for the most part, women weren't allowed to go to medical school or to go to veterinary school or to go study physics, right? I mean, the one of the very first doctors to get their medical license had to masquerade as a man, right? Like, you've got Elizabeth Blackwell fighting tooth and nail to be taken seriously as a medical professional. And now, once that gate opened and women were allowed into these fields, now they dominate them, right? So what I'm saying is, what we're arguing for, as you mentioned earlier, like the matriarchy better step up. I don't want a matriarchy. I don't think that it's better for women to be in charge. I think that both men and women and anybody in between needs to be represented in the society in which they live. Whether that's men, whether that's women, right? Historically speaking, it's been both. And neither of these societies adequately dealt with the needs of every one of their constituents. It's not an ideal society to live in, and I think that we as humans living in this modern era should strive for the ideal. Now, you mentioned earlier that women or that men built society, right? First of all, if you want to go back in time and look at any of these ancient monuments or civilizations that have been built, they were throwing human lives at them to make them happen, and the gender of the individual did not matter, right? Building the pyramids, there's male and female corvée laborers working on that. Stonehenge, same situation, right? It's from the ground up a class issue more than it is a gender issue, and that it has been that way since the dawn of time. Now, I'm married, right? So do I like the idea of my husband being like defensive or like wanting to defend me? Sure, because he's my spouse, and I would defend him as well. I would do my best to defend my husband if for whatever reason he was getting beat up by somebody. But as Alyssa said, we don't live in a society that is built upon beating the crap out of each other with our fists. And as I mentioned to a caller earlier today, if you look to the natural world, even in species where males are larger than females, females can still deal serious damage to males because they live in groups with one another. So no matter which perspective you're coming from here about justifying the patriarchal system, whether it's natural, nope, not always. Whether it's men-built society, nope, not the case. Whether it's better for men and women, nope, it's not. Because as we've seen patriarchal constraints relax, we've seen women grow happier, expand into jobs that they didn't previously have, and overall, society as a whole flourishes. Because you've got more smart people working on more projects across the globe. And as the last thing I'll mention, in my anecdotal experience, a place that I've experienced, patriarchy, or what I would like to call medical misogyny, is if you go to your gynecologist and you get like an IUD insertion, you don't get any kind of medication for that. They tell you to take 2 ibuprofen, 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, and come in for that procedure. And that procedure involves sounding the cervix and inserting a device into the uterus that is immensely painful. Whereas one of my coworkers' husbands had a vasectomy, and he got prescribed every painkiller under the sun for that. I don't believe that that's right. I think that is another area in which we see a whole lot of attention paid to men in general, and not so much in women. And there's an excellent book out there. The name of it is slipping my mind now. I got it from the library. I don't actually have it on my shelves, but it specifically looks at the difference in how average over-the-counter medications impact men versus women, because all the testing was done on men. No one doing these medical tests for ibuprofen or aspirin or, Zoloft or whatever. We're testing these on women and keeping women in mind. It was all done on men, with the male phenotype being prioritized. And as a result, across the board, women experience more side effects on any given medication because we just don't know how they impact them because no one's checked.
By the way, they started, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but about that testing, there's a law that they put into place that they have to do some form of testing. It doesn't have to be early. It's not required to be early testing, but they have to do some testing on women for medications. That was only put into place in like 1987, by the way. And it doesn't have to be through all parts of the testing process. It just has to be at some point in the process. That also doesn't include pregnant women. So there are medications that there are people that might live on medications, get pregnant, and we have no idea how they're going to affect them. Sorry, continue.
No, I mean, that was pretty much all I was going to say. The last thing I was going to add is when we think of great minds in history, right? It's dominated by men, right? Whether we're looking at philosophers in Roman times or whatever. But as you move into the more recent past, literally as you see the constraints on women relax, you see an exponential increase of great women thinkers in whatever field we're looking at. I'm most familiar, of course, with the natural sciences, but one that came to mind the other day was something that was new to me that I read the other day was that Mozart's sister, Mozart was considered by their tutor when they were both young kids to be as talented, if not more talented, than the child prodigy Mozart. Mozart went on to independently create all these incredible symphonies or whatever. I don't know the music terminology. And Mozart's sister was married off and taught piano for the rest of her life. She wasn't allowed to compose. So what I'm trying to say is that it's like, imagine the amount of muted individuals that have been suppressed through the years because their society in which they lived didn't allow them to do great things. Hatshepsut, an incredible pharaoh who was a woman, right? She was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt. She brought in peace and prosperity during the dynasty in which she ruled, reestablished trade with Punt, right? And afterwards, they tried to erase her name from history because she was a woman. And yet her reign is thought of during that kingdom. I believe it was Old Kingdom Egypt, but it might have been Middle Kingdom, as incredibly prosperous. So we see this motif repeat itself over and over and over again, which is when you let women into the space improves, because it turns out when you suppress 50% of people from being in a space, you're going to lose out on a lot of awesome minds and a lot of awesome thinkers. And that sucks. And it's for that reason that having a patriarchal structure is bad for society. It's bad for our species. And in the same way, a matriarchal society that would suppress men would also be bad. So the best thing to do is to do away with one gender is better than the other and say, let's allow everybody to give it their best shot and go for an egalitarian society. That's all we're saying, John. Like, we're not saying that, men need to be thrown in jail or something like that.
Yeah. And just, we're coming up on our time. So, John, I would love to continue this conversation with you, and maybe you can call back another time, but I want to give you just an opportunity to respond, and then we'll wrap up our call with you for now.
Yeah. Okay. So my thing is, it's not about the patriarchal or whatever, but all I said was we are here because we are here. It works, okay? Male got their physics, not just physics, but they got their own thing they're good at, and females are good at other things too. Okay, it's not. They're the same, but with the patriarchy, both benefit. That's the way. That's the only point I have to make. Okay, everything I've heard so far is just male, like all these what's this? Emotions. That's the female part of the argument. Okay, males don't deal with that. Okay, males are simple. Okay, they build,
John, do you
they provide, and
anger
that's
is
it.
an emotion? Do you think rage or anger is an emotion? I'm just really curious.
Yes, it is. Yes, rage.
Okay,
Yeah, but that's
every
how men.
war on
That's
planet
how
Earth
men are.
was
Though.
started due to rage, which is
That's how men
that's
are,
the
though.
masculine emotion. Right, but you said that we're getting like it's emotion, but like I would argue that if you're going to pick a sex that is more emotional, it's going to be men because they
It's
get really
men.
mad and
It's
they start
Well,
worrying over it.
here's my thing though. Everything on social media, you look at the whoever posts on there. The females are doing it the most. You know, men hide their emotions. Men try to hide their emotions.
Right,
That's
but
just
they
how it is.
also, that doesn't mean that they don't have them. That means that they're hiding them because
have
they're
them, but-
afraid of being shamed. And the reason they're afraid of being
No, they're
shamed
not.
is because
They don't want to show it. They don't want to show they're weak. That's how
yes,
how
but
it is.
that's
Because
not, it's not
when
weak
you show,
to have
let
emotions.
me finish. When they show they're weak, not a lot of females would want them. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying?
That's not
I'm
true.
just trying to
That
get
is not true.
Yes, it
Like
is.
two females right here telling you that's false, John. I'm a
That's
female.
not true.
I love emotional men. I think that's great. I
Me
want
too.
somebody who isn't so much of a baby that they can't express themselves to me. When I see a male, and to use the male-female terminology, right? Like when I see a guy that is emotionally stunted, he gets mad easily, he pops off. This is the kind of guy that would have accidentally started a tribal war if he lived 250,000 years ago. I don't trust him. I think this is the kind of guy that would potentially get mad at me. He would pop off at me. And if I'm living 250,000 years ago, you know, I'm SOL unless my sisters and female relatives will help me mob them or something like that. But you know, I don't know. Like I find that to be not a good quality. And I'll speak for my own generation here, right? As like in my experience, and you can tell me if I'm incorrect, Alyssa, right? But like, I don't know a single woman who is looking for a guy that is emotionless, quote unquote.
Yeah,
I would that's
agree.
not a desirable trait in a mate.
Yeah, but if you look at social media though, they want guys to be sensitive. They want guys to be all kinds of stuff. That's what you see on social media. All these females crying where all the men are at. You know? You don't see men crying where are all the females.
I know the post you're talking about, and I'll tell you, John, you know, my Twitter timeline is hopelessly warped thanks to Elon's new algorithm. And the amount of men that I see on my timeline wondering, where are all the women? Where are all the women that want to sit at home and cook for me, and but also go to work and provide dual income because no one can have a single income household in this economy, you know? But also they want them to be barefoot and pregnant, but also they want to make sure that these women are you know, freaks in the sack or something like that. Like they want everything. They want what's the phrase? There's a phrase for it, Alyssa, where it's like they want a mommy who will also have sex with them is what I've seen described as. Someone who will take care.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen from men on social media. Now maybe my timeline's messed up, so you know maybe that's just what
I saw
I've seen,
someone.
but
The men are easy.
The men are complex like everybody else. Men are complex. Every human being is every human being is complex. Every human being has emotions and they deserve to have space. They deserve to be validated, and every human being deserves to be treated with respect. And we know that the patriarchy prioritizes respecting men. And that is not right. That's not how that goes. That doesn't make sense. It's not fair.
Prioritizing is bad. You shouldn't prioritize one over the other because masculine is good, feminine is good, men are good, women are good, everybody in between is good, and everybody deserves to be heard, regardless of what they are, who they are.
Yeah, but I understand. Everybody needs to be heard, but the patriarchy is here. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, but that's
it is what it is because it is what it is because it came to that.
But
No,
John, do you
that's
not
not-
dream of something bigger?
Then-
Let's dream big. Let's change it. Let's become egalitarian. Let's make it better for men and better for women, and not move over to somebody else being in charge. Let's fix
Right.
it. Let's
And
dream of a better world.
Okay, check this out. You know that Canadian doctor, whatever his name is, the guy from
I
Canada.
don't.
He
no.
says the more
I don't.
egalitarian you are, the more it shows. The more the differences between women and men differ.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
I
You're
don't
saying
know.
that if you give them the choice, then they'll naturally move into their own category. You know what? I don't care.
Yes.
I think if men and women
You
want to
don't-
pour
well,
into their own,
then
they
it-
can do it.
If
Give
you
them the
don't
choice.
care, then it will end up the same way it is right now.
I disagree.
It will go back the
disagree.
same way.
You'll see generalizations,
as
but you
well.
will not see a patriarchy.
John, babe, if it were working, we wouldn't be having this conversation for 35 minutes. You wouldn't see it all over social media. You wouldn't see these conversations happening all over the place. It's not working. The women are not happy. We are not pleased. There
Well-
are more women who are choosing to be single. Nobody's happy. There are more women who are choosing to be single. Do you know every single year there is a drastic uptick in women who are no longer interested in dating just men and are starting to also date women. And I think that's partially because we're starting to care a little less about the patriarchal standard and are doing the things that we want to do, because at the end of the day, the reward is not really there anymore. We're still like, there's no reward in women participating in the patriarchy. And so every single year, less and less women are choosing to participate in it. If it were working, we wouldn't be having this conversation for 35 minutes. And I think you should also, if you can, take a moment to reflect on two grown women telling you the patriarchy does not work for us. And you, a man who by the way that the patriarchy works, is given all of the prioritization and all of the comfort that you want in this system is given to men. And you're telling me that the system works. But of course you think the system works because the system is built for you. We are telling you the system is not built for us and we are not happy. And for you to continue to have the attitude that it does work and that everyone is happy shows that the patriarchy benefits you. Because you can still walk away from this conversation and continue to benefit from it, continue to tell everyone else that they're happy, and it's not going to matter. Your life goes on. But again, if I want to go and get a medical procedure done, like getting an IUD, I'm going to have to do that with no pain medication. If I want to get certain medications that are covered by insurance for men, they are not covered in insurance for me. I'm going to have to pay more for my hygiene products. I'm going to have to get paid less at my job than a man who's doing exactly the same thing.
May I interrupt you?
Sure.
Yeah, because all that again is for your side, the female side, right? The what do you call this? The feminine hygiene and stuff like that. They're different than the men's. The men's don't need those stuff. Okay. Now here's the thing. I never said the patriarchy is better or whatever. Okay. I said it is what it is. Everything brought us to this. Okay. I never said anything is better.
Don't
Okay?
you want something better?
I
though?
said it came to this. Naturally,
Do you want something
it came
better,
to
though,
this.
Don? Do you want something
Say again?
better? Do you want something
Well,
better
if
than
you
this?
can, like I said, if you can step up your game and not feminine, or whatever, if you can step up, because I believe not everyone is the same, okay? Not everyone is the same. Some
I would
are smart.
argue, though,
Hold
that
on. Let
women-
me finish. Let me finish
Whoa,
my point.
Whoa.
Because you keep it, I'll let you talk for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes at a time. I can't write them all the points down. Okay? You're
called it
making me lose
show.
my thoughts. Okay, I said men and females are different. The men are good at some parts, females are good at some parts. Okay, some men are smart, some females are smarter than the men. Okay, now unless you want to bring something up that is better than what we have right now, step up the game. Let's see it.
John,
Because
I
all I
just
see
did.
all I see in social media is women crying, and all it is nothing really. When you want to say equality, you just want to pick some of the stuff that
John,
men
that
have.
is not what I want to do. Now, I feel like there's a little bit of non-appreciation for the slight power imbalance that is going on here, right? Like, I appreciate not wanting to be interrupted. I think part of the problem is that we're calling over the phone, and the delay makes it feel like you're being interrupted more than you are. When if we were having this conversation in person, we'd probably have a much easier back and forth. But at the same time, it is one of those situations where when you call into a show, it typically is it's a 2 versus 1 situation here. It's going to favor the hosts. Now, again, like all Alyssa and I are saying is that we are hoping and working towards something better. Now, I can't speak to the people that you're seeing on social media. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know why they're saying it. All I know is that what Alyssa and I do and what the women in my life do is they work towards this goal. Every couple I know has a man and a woman or 2 women or 2 men or whatever working towards what they want in life, which is a more egalitarian society that benefits more people. It's how we vote. It's how we live our life. It's what we teach our children, right? So when you're saying, okay, go out and do it, baby, I am. I live it. I live that truth. I live that life. And I preach that to whoever will listen because I think it makes the world better for everybody. That's what we're saying here, right? I don't know why, you're saying do better, done, right? So I'm wondering why, from your perspective, if we're sitting here offering on a silver platter an alternative, something new to try, why you wouldn't be on board with it. And you said, okay, like patriarchy is what's worked so far. Again, as somebody who studies human evolution, right? That's what I'm getting my PhD in. I'm a 3rd-year PhD student studying biological anthropology. My master's was in primatology. I can tell you that from the natural world, that's not the only system that exists out there, nor is it arguably even the dominant system, that being patriarchy. Now, how did we get here today? Like with our modern civilization, with this technology? I would propose to you a counter thought here, which is that this is where we got with 50% of the population working pretty dang hard. Men in positions of power and in academia and in the halls of progression, moving humanity forward. Would we not be much further along if we'd had 100% of the guns blazing this entire time? And would that not be better for society? Especially given that the second that we started letting women again into these various fields, whatever they may be, we started to see the exponential growth further steepen that growth curve because you got more brains working on it. I mean, the point of the matter is there are areas factually where women get the short end of the stick, culturally and legally. There are factually areas where men get the short end of the stick, like legally and culturally. There are factually fewer areas where men get the shorter end of the stick than women get the shorter end of the stick. This is a vestige of the society that put us where we are today. So what I'm saying is, let's just remove anybody getting the short end of the stick. And the only way that that's going to happen is moving towards egalitarianism, not patriarchy, not matriarchy. I don't think that's controversial. But I also think that we've been on this one call for a hot minute. So, John, I'm going to thank you very much for your time. I apologize if things got passionate, but we do, I presume, have other callers on the line. And what I will say to you is that I've enjoyed this exchange, and I hope that you will call back next time Alyssa and I are both on this call, because I would like to continue it, hopefully to its termination point.
I've had John on mute, just because I was also getting a lot of feedback from his line too. So John, if you're still listening, we appreciate you calling and having this conversation with us. I'm going to drop your line, but call back another time, because this is a conversation that I think could definitely continue, and we could both really learn a lot. So Thank you for calling. And we actually, because we're already past our little time, we have no more calls right now for tonight. But I think everyone can just now that John is off the line, we're gonna just take like a 2 seconds of silence.
Decompress.
My ears feel so much better. After a while, I was getting like,
you have the headphones,
oh,
dude.
I
I don't know how you do that. I know there's a controversial thing where it's like, why don't we mute more? Or it's like, classic. You got two women hosting and the male guest is trying to overtalk them, like classic meme. But like, honestly, I think that John would have just kind of tuckered himself out. Like I wanted to hear what he had to say because Alyssa and I both know that there's no grounds to hold that position. We can let him talk and then we can mow down those arguments. I think that
right.
better way of handling it personally.
Anytime I hear conversations like that, the thing that I think of the most is honestly like he doesn't really even, I don't think he really even knows and understands the way that the patriarchy also hurts him. Like, you know, I just kind of like I'm sad for him in a lot of ways because there's a whole like host of things that he could have access to if he kind of like let that go. And he's not really in a space to do that, but maybe he'll call back and we'll be able to talk about that further. And I don't know, help him kind of unravel some of that because it's unfortunate to live in a space where you feel like your only option is to be an alpha male type of thing. And we know that's like that sucks. And we know that that's not what people want. And it's also, I mean, to have the reasoning be because that's what men acting that way is the way that women want. It's like, first of all, literally, no, it's not. Literally, no, it's not. Also, more and more women are dating women every year. So I don't know what you want to do with that information. If I'm being mature, I'm thinking, okay, we're just getting more like we want to explore. But if I'm being immature, I'm saying because we literally don't want to date the men anymore. Because what are you doing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what literature there is to back this up. Like again, I like to support my arguments with the literature, and like this is an area that I'm not very familiar with, so I'm really working off of like, oh, this article I read, and then the article was like, oh, I saw someone tweet about it, right? But my understanding is that. Overall, based off of surveys, it seems like, big asterisk, it seems like the standards of women have gone up quite a bit because they've gotten a lot of freedoms that they didn't previously have, right, over time. And so, you get more freedoms, you have more wiggle room, you can take more action when it comes to the decisions that you're making. And so as a result, the standards have gone up, whereas because men have not gained additional rights that they didn't previously have, but it mostly stayed the same, their standards haven't changed. And so as a result, you see a lot of lonely men, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of women who won't accept what they previously might have accepted in like the 50s and the 60s. And that actually just sucks. That sucks because, instead of saying like what we need to address is when we're addressing things like the male loneliness crisis, which I do think exists. I think a lot of people are lonely today. What we need to be teaching people like from the ground up is that it's like, don't treat the person you're going after as like or like wanting to get with as like this quarry that is to be, captured, right? It's like you're treated like a relationship. You should meet people, right? Treat the person that you're going to be with like a person, a partner that you would want to tackle life with, regardless of the gender or sex of anybody involved, right? It's like this stuff is not that complicated. And I think a lot of these, I feel really bad for a lot of like the red pill guys out there because they're being sold this lie that if we can just return to tradition, then you'll have the doting wife, barefoot and pregnant, and you'll have exactly what you want. And it's like, no, unfortunately, that is a fantasy. And if we want to move forward as a species, we have to address these loneliness crises and these various social issues that are facing us today with compassion and empathy and from an egalitarian perspective that's going to benefit everybody. Because like the same guy, like I know John is the type of guy who would be like, oh, but what about in the courts where the courts are stacked against men? And it's like, the reason why family courts favor women is because of the same patriarchal bullshit that you were just
Right.
saying needs to be instituted because you judges
the system
assume
that you created.
yeah, it's like you assume that because the mother is a woman that they must be a better parent or innately a better parent.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's dumb. You can't just make an assumption like that, right? And it's like you're railing against the same thing we're railing against, which is these goofy assumptions that that complementarianism should be instituted at a legal and cultural level, which is ridiculous. If you want to live your life like that, you want to do the trad wife, trad husband thing, whatever, like be my guest. But don't, like you said earlier, don't impose that on me and everybody else. It's bad for society if you implement that at large, I think.
Yeah, as one of my best friends would say, goofy bozo behavior. And
silly goose award. Silly goose award.
Silly goose award. And the last thing I'll say about this is I think part of it is also women are no longer in a place where we need to depend on men for anything. Like we don't need to have a man to get a credit card, a house, or bank account. And we now also are in a situation where, because of the state of the economy, most households with children still require both people to be working. So it's not a situation where you have a stay-at-home parent for most households. So what is the advantage then? Unless I've seen people say this on social media, and I love this. If you're not bringing me more peace than I would have than when I'm by myself, then I don't really. What's this for? Because I have a great time by myself. I love it.
It's like you don't want to, like, you don't want, I'll speak to somebody who, like, I'm a cis heterosexual woman to a guy, right? Like, I'll speak from my perspective. My husband is my partner. He's my best friend. The reason we're married is because we make each other's life better, not because one of us subjugates the other and gets, solely what they want out of the situation. That would be ridiculous. Why would anyone pick that, right? Like, that's so silly. The person you're in a relationship with should be someone who, like, improves your life and vice versa. That's the whole point of getting in a relationship in the first place. Otherwise, why not just stay solo, right? Like, there's nothing that a person who's bad for you is going to give you other than strife. And, we can internalize as much strife as we want. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I loved this conversation so much, and we should wrap up the show because it's almost 9:00 and I haven't had dinner yet, and my tummy.
What happened?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
I don't know.
You're back.
I'm back. Okay. Should we do our super chats? Should we try it again?
Super chat. Let's do it. Super chat time. Hopefully we won't fade into the shadow.
Just a moment.
Okay. No worries.
He's on it.
Yeah, I almost forgot about super chats. My God. I love super chats.
Oh, never. Jimmy would be upset if we forgot about it. That's like
I would be so sad without super chats. They're always like the funniest comments, and they also bring me back to like earlier parts in the conversation. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we talked about that.
Oh yeah. There's nothing like reading like a lighthearted super chat after you've been worked up too, and then you're like you're still fired up and ready to fight, and then you see it and you're like, yeah, I think probably my favorite of the Wiggles would be the blue one.
Exactly. All right, Erika, do you want to take this super chat first, and I'll take the next one?
Sure. Okay. 1999 from Wonder. She, her. My Catholic mom says she is happy with her place being in the home, but she is always has a pain expression on her face. Do you think she's probably saying this out of fear, trying to convince her, or something else? Yeah. I mean, I think that it's got to be like, to some degree, there's a defense mechanism where it's like, okay, it's a sunk cost. You spend your whole life doing a thing that you were told is the right thing to do, and when you see that there's an alternative way that you could have lived it, that does not feel good, especially if that's the way you might have wanted to live it in the first place. And so you have to retroactively justify the way you've lived your life as like, well, this is the way that it's supposed to be. Now, there are people out there, like stay-at-home parents, who absolutely love their life, and that is epic. That is awesome, right? Like, the point isn't that there shouldn't be stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads, right? The point is that you have the choice to choose, I just choked on my spit, to choose that if you want that for yourself, right? Or not if you don't. That's all we're advocating for here is the freedom to choose.
Yeah. I wonder if it would even be nice to like have a conversation with your mom and be like, "Hey, I noticed that you have sort of like a interesting expression on your face when we have conversations like this. Do you want to like talk about it at all?" I don't know what your relationship is like with your mom, but that might be nice. But thank you for the super chat. $9.99 from Megan Marie. Alyssa, why do women get called sluts for being sexually active but get called a tease when they don't put out? Erika, do you think millions of years from now non-human apes could become human-like? Okay, well, I'll answer the first part. Why do women get called sluts for being... Okay, well, because patriarchal standards. Because in reality, like, there is no number of people that any woman could have sex with that would define you as being a slut. And there is no... Calling someone a tease is just basically invalidating consent. You are saying that that person's consent doesn't matter because I wanted to have whatever interaction with you, and you're just violating that consent. And sluts is based off of like literally nothing, because if you ask a million different people what number would make somebody a slut, it's going to vary so much, and ultimately it's just a way to just make people feel like shit. Both of these things are ways to coerce women into having sex or not having sex, and other people having control over their bodies. And they really are just, they're words that I think we all are going to have to work really hard to make them feel not so charged, because at the end of the day, they are words with the intention of hurting. That's really all that they are. And so, hurt people. And when people say things like that, you got to wonder what's going on there. And it's never about us, and it's always about them wanting to take away our choice, wanting to take away our consent and our agency over our own bodies. And that is all.
From millions of years, could non-human apes become human-like? 100%. In fact, I would argue that there is nothing, or, I would actually say there is nothing, even taking into account some of the things that are prescribed as being exclusively human. There's nothing that humans do today that other apes don't do to a different degree. There are a lot of things that we dial up to 11, things like speech, things like imagination and art and stuff like that, but there is nothing that is completely separate in human behavior from absolutely everything else. Even the number one thing that I love to quote from Robert Sapolsky, which is that we can empathize across space and time, right? Like chimpanzees feel empathy, bonobos feel empathy, hell, elephants and cetaceans feel empathy, crows feel empathy. But we're able to look at the picture of a sad thing, like a picture of a cartoon sad dog, and that's not even a real thing, and we can feel bad for it. But that's just an elaboration on base empathy, right? So I would say that absolutely, given 1 million years, even just 1 million, you're going to get a trend towards more human behavior, more familiarly human behavior in non-human apes, because they've got all the equipment they need there already.
Love it.
Okay, $5 from Vandalia, 1998. Hey, Vandalia, how are you? Erika, even in 2024 as a future PhD, you still get looked down on because you're a woman. Plus, can't wait till you can start my podcast again. Yeah, I mean, it's more like you have to provide a lot of extra effort. You have to put in a lot of extra effort in any given situation to make sure that you're being heard, to the degree that I would argue some male colleagues don't have to do, because it is a given. So you have to fight to be taken seriously in some scenarios. And what I will say with that as well, that is kind of a shame, is that the way that you fight to be taken seriously is that you kind of masquerade masculine characteristics, because men tend to take masculine characteristics more seriously. So whether that's dressing that way, or speaking in a artificially lowering your voice or whatever to be heard, yeah, it happens. And it sucks. Academia is getting better, but it's not there yet. And all you have to do is take a look at Academia PhD Twitter to see that.
$5 from Dade Murphy. Rice Krispie Treats flavored Coffee Mate is evidence that late stage capitalism is out of fucking control. Shit slaps though. That's really funny. I am a sucker for different kinds of coffee creamer. So honestly, if I saw that, I probably would buy it. I would
It's one of
consider
those
it
things-
strongly.
Yeah, it's like I will enjoy aspects of late stage capitalism 100%, but you can also look at that and be like, oh, this is this is a sign of the crumbling empire. I saw a banana shrink wrapped the other day, and I was like, it already has
wow.
a peel. Why are you posting
Wow.
plastic on it? But it's like,
I think about that every time I'm at the grocery store with like any vegetables. I'm like, vegetables and
Yes.
fruit, I never put them in the additional plastic bag. I don't really understand what that's for. I don't get that.
It's like another like, oh no, I sure hope my tomato that's probably already touched the ground of 8 different warehouses to get here doesn't touch the shopping cart
Right.
that I'm putting it in. It's like, I promise it's fine. You don't need the little plastic film. Bring your own bags to the grocery store. That's my recommendation. And then you can be sure that the only filth it's touching is your own.
Yes, agreed. Let's see, do we have more chats? I think we do.
I think we do too. I was going to say $5
Oh,
from
yeah.
Monkey. Mandrels respect the power of the many to keep the few privileged in check. What can we take away from this? Mandrel mob the rich. Yeah, in fact, you will see this in a lot of different situations. In chimpanzees, when an alpha male is hoarding resources or behaving in like an overall shitty kind of way, usually number 2 and number 3 in that linear dominance hierarchy will conspire, because chimps are incredibly political animals. Bonobos do this too, but in a different way. And they will overthrow the unjust leader, because as the late, great Franz de Waal once said, you know, the best leader is the fair, kind, egalitarian one.
Love it. $5 from Nicholas Martinez. Chewed Gum is my new favorite YouTube show. Wow!
Hey,
I love to hear it.
We will justify our existence to you, I promise.
Yes. I am so glad. That's so nice. Oh my
Holy
goodness.
crap. Woo! This is you.
Okay, $100 from Jonathan. Much appreciation to the show. Been looking forward to this show all week. Really also appreciate Alyssa's shout out to autism awareness and cultivating a healthier relationship with that. Autism is not understood. Also, F the patriarchy. Let men be themselves. Agreed across the board. I think, first of all, that is an incredibly generous super chat. So thank you, Jonathan. That is so incredibly kind. And I am really fascinated by autism, because I think that there's a lot about it that, of course, is very misunderstood or just not understood in general, purposefully or not. And I love. There's obviously, I'm sure everyone knows Love on the Spectrum. There's a lot about it that I think is really problematic, but something about it that I think is really special and that I would highlight as being like really like a reason why I'll watch it occasionally is how open the people on that show are with their feelings. And it is so special to hear people express the way that they feel without being so concerned about how it's going to be received when it has to do with relationships and flirting and those types of feelings, because that's one area where we are really, really reserved. And watching people have conversations without those reservations has been like one of the like greatest pleasures in learning more about people with autism going through their dating and relationship lives, and that lack of like concern for the way it's going to be received is also something that can make it really challenging, like, of course. And that's what I think could use more just support in general, but it also I think can really be a superpower in a lot of ways. And so, you know, it's just managing, it's just a different, like with something like that, you're just using a slightly different approach in teaching how to have those conversations moving forward, especially as adults. And so actually, I think April is Autism Awareness Month, and I'm hoping to get some, no promises, but I would love to get some like more resources together around like dating and relationships for people with autism. I just think it's like such a special group of people that, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and someone also said in the chat that that they're pretty infantilized in their sex lives, and so there's like there could be higher rates of STIs. I don't know the exact numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised because people are just assuming that they're not interested. And
Right.
I think, you know, that support would be so special. Anyway, I love that message, and I appreciate you so much, Jonathan. That is just so sweet.
Thank you. $5 from Unclean Unicorn. To what extent does female mate selection drive the sort of male competition that contributes to patriarchy, a sexual selection byproduct? It totally depends on the ancestral conditions, right? Because, like, you know, you've got a great example is the geladas that I mentioned earlier, which are multi-level. They're super sexually dimorphic, just like the second group that I'm going to mention in a second, Hamadryas baboons. But female selection completely dominates the way that this multi-level system actually operates, and it's because the females are all related to one another and they cooperate to achieve the end goal, which is having the male that lives with them and hangs out with them and sometimes defends them, even like be a kind and agreeable individual to have in their group. And you compare that to Hamadryas baboons, which are really closely related to these guys, which are incredibly violent by comparison. They also live in these multi-level systems, but males actually ensure that females are not in a group with their female relatives because they're female exogamous. The females disperse, and so as a result, the females can't cooperate with one another as easily, and the males are quite harsh to them. And you see this kind of duality exist in many different social animals, where sometimes females are exhibiting choice and sometimes males are exhibiting choice, and then sometimes there's female competition and sometimes there's male competition. And so these two things together will drive the social system to change in different ways, which is ultimately determined by the environment. Now, how this contributes to patriarchy in a human sense, I think it is extremely telling that from our common ancestor with chimpanzees, we've progressively gotten less sexually dimorphic over time. Right, the differences between the male and female, the generalized morphotype has gotten, the difference has gotten smaller from Australopithecus ancestors. And what that says to paleoanthropologists is that male competition is going down and female choice for males that are socially adept and kind has actually gone up. And so I think that can only go so far, though, before you get the patriarchy as a product, which comes from the advent of sedentary agriculturalist societies where females can be isolated from their kin, and that's ultimately where you get a male dominant system start, because that dimorphism that still exists between males and females now becomes emphasized again, because as a woman you can't rely on your female kin to help you out if someone's treating you poorly. Hell, you can't even rely on your male kin, because that was also, like, you know, I put a lot of emphasis on females relying on, you know, sisters and aunts and things like that. But it's also brothers and fathers and things like that, because in a tribal group, you know everybody. So if your husband, you know, your mate is being mean to you, you can just say, hey, this guy was mean to me, and he is getting absolutely annihilated or ousted from the group and eaten by a saber-toothed cat, right? So group cohesion was a really big deal, and the second you can isolate an individual, you're going to get power imbalances. And those power imbalances with agriculturalism from pastoralism, which proceeded from hunter-gatherers, only exacerbated through time. So yes. $10 from Electron 128. Okay, sorry. I'm jumping the gun on the ones that have monkeys involved.
No, it's totally fine. I can't answer the ones with monkeys involved. Are you kidding me? Also, the only thing I was going to say is you just have the biggest, juiciest brain. You know so much. Every time you start, I can't believe it.
I'm a hyperfixator, and I've made a career out of my hyperfixation on the natural world and stuff like that. So, you know, that's my goal is to, and I think it's so cool. I want everybody else to think it's cool as well. So thank you. I'm glad to. I've learned a ton from this show, like from the relationship dynamics perspective that I didn't appreciate. Like, it's easy to get mired in, like, oh, this is what I would do, but you're an incredibly empathetic person. You're really good at taking the position of someone else and you know, offering advice from that position. As a woodland grass-eating monkey, I took great offense when John questioned my love life. Plenty of lady monkeys like my genes. This is what I'm saying. in the natural world, the schmoozer always wins the day, right? Always across the board. It's like you're never going to get what you want. You're not going to convince the opposite the opposite sex of your simplified group to get with you if you're being a jerk. That much is for sure.
1999 from Melody Kate. No more mansplaining would be so nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be nice? I would love that. I would love that for all of us. And my favorite part of his mansplaining was how it started with, that was a lot. And then not really addressing what we were, any of the important things that we talked about. And then just giving like anecdotal and everything and whatever. It's fine.
I want regular egalitarian condescension, not
exactly.
Condescension. Like, that's, come on.
Exactly.
$5 from 128. I misspelled monkeys. This is my penance. I wear my monkey shame with pride. And you are forgiven. Thank you for you. We'll put that $5 for group.
Oh my god. Oh, hold on.
All right, $5 from Anna. This is Robin, a caller from the first episode. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourselves. Have you drank enough water today? I always come to the line episodes with my Slim's Chickens bucket of water.
Oh, Robin, hi. I remember you, and I'm so glad that you're back. And I'm working on it. I probably could use some more, but I'll have dinner and I'll drink a nice big glass, and hopefully I don't wake up at 3 a.m. having to pee. But you know what? It's the risk we take.
It's a reference to something you said in the first show. You said hydrate and masturbate.
Oh, nice.
I stand by that.
Okay, $10 from Storm Chaser Noah. Great show, guys. Awesome Dr. Tompkins debunk Erika. I cite your content quite often. Okay, I'm glad to hear that, Storm Chaser Noah, because you guys will not believe this. Those of you who follow me for my Young Earth creations and debunking, Tompkins decided to open his mouth and run it on Homo Naledi stuff recently. And of course, as a shot to absolutely no one, he has no clue what he's talking about. So I'm sure once I get around to it, we'll talk about that and we'll bust his chops some more. And sweet Rob Carter will have to come to his rescue yet again. All right. $5 from Monkey to Typewriter. When it comes to physical conflict, I imagine Gutsa Gibbon has the advantage. Isn't she like 4 stories tall? Wouldn't she be fist fighting kaiju? Yeah, no, this is true. I'm enormous. My set is I specifically constructed to make me look normal size, but I'm actually quite large. Ask Forrest. He's seen me in person. I'm enormous. I'm a very tall person.
It's so funny. $5 from Lily Musai. I had a hard time getting uterine cancer diagnosed and recognized due to my doctors not taking my pain seriously. I hope the issue gets fixed. And thanks. Well, I hope that you are doing okay. That's a pretty legit diagnosis. I hope you're doing that. Legit is like a stupid word, but I don't want to say serious because I don't know how serious it is. But I hope that you're doing okay, Lily. And yeah, that is extremely common. There is, I can't remember now because I don't have as big and juicy of a brain. But there's a statistic about it's juicy, not as much though. I don't have as good of a brain for like recalling numbers. I wish I did, but I'm getting better. But anyways, so there is a large group of women who every single year will go to the ER because they say that they're having a heart attack and will get sent home because they are told that it's anxiety. It happens every single day in this country. So, and also the test that they use for heart attacks in the US is a test that was created for men. So I would highly encourage you to do a little like quick googly Google on the symptoms of heart attacks for women because they are a little bit different, and just take a look and just make sure that you continue to advocate for yourself in medical spaces. Unfortunately, that is very important for women to do because that is a challenge that we often face where our pain gets disregarded, especially if you are a person of color on top of that. Oh, your baby's ready for you.
They're already, I know, I'm sure you heard that. They're already starting to raise a little
Yeah.
hell. It's 8 o'clock, so they're mad. $10 for the cheeseburger. I never got an IUD because I don't have the parts, but 2 Tylenol is beyond insane. With regard to the wage gap being debunked, data manipulation is a hell of a drug. I've been misled myself. Yeah, my understanding of the wage gap thing is that these days, the way that a lot of people who are not, who doubt that that is a real thing, is they point to the fact that it's like, oh, well, it's because men and women they go into different professions, and that's their choice. Therefore, the wage gap is not really a thing. And like, I think it's really interesting that that's being used as like a catch-all, because I don't believe that it actually covers the entirety of the wage gap. My understanding is that it reduces it. But even when you account for something like that, you don't fully get rid of it. And then there's also the question as to, okay, well, why are men and women choosing the jobs that they're choosing? What is going into that? It may be that all else equal, there still is a generalizable preference for, what we would consider like falling into men and women, right? And it's like, if that's the case, so be it. But the point is, we need to reduce the pressures to go into different areas because of sex or gender, and say, okay, like, do it because you want to. And yeah, it is beyond insane with the 2 Tylenol. It was singularly the most acute pain that I've had in my life. I've had greater chronic pain, but like an IUD insertion is pretty next level. I can't believe they get away with doing what they're doing. Like, again, like I take it pretty seriously to say that something is medically misogynist. And I would say that, especially surrounding birth control, like, for instance, one of my, just as like a quick anecdote, one of my colleagues just got a job teaching gross anatomy to medical students. Because when you get a degree in biological anthropology, usually you end up doing some time teaching anatomy and physiology, or just anatomy to med students, because it's a good gig. And there are way more of those gigs than there are being a professor in a given subject. Anyways, so she gave a presentation for this job as like an interview. On the male and female like reproductive system, like the generalized male and female reproductive system. And while looking into it, she found an ungodly amount of sources that said that the cervix doesn't have any nerve endings, which is why they don't use like a topical number for everybody to make sure that it's not painful. And she was like, that's just like brutally untrue. And the way that they figured this out, the root cause of that statistic, because I didn't know where it came from, right? Like, I took gross anatomy this past semester, and we learned that, yeah, absolutely it has nerve endings. That's ridiculous. And it's also a really important part of your body to have nerve endings to it for many different reasons. But apparently the way that rumor got started was the guy that did the study, and I don't know his name, to find out if the cervix had nerve endings, was like tickling the cervix with a feather or something like that to see if women could feel it. And it's like,
oh my God.
That's not what any of these
very
procedures
different than taking pincers and pulling it down.
The teniculum is not a feather, right? Like, and so that's apparently where the rumor got started, is that it was like, yeah, you can't feel fine sensations on your cervix. And it was like, well, okay, yeah, that would work if getting an IUD was like getting a feather tickling your cervix, but that's not what it is. It's not what it is.
Couldn't be further. $5 from Cookies Riot. As a male with female colleagues who did way better than me in engineering classes, John can absolutely... What's GFH?
Go fuck himself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one. I'm so bad at these. See, my memory is so bad. Go fuck himself. With the men are better at physics BS. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It was so funny.
Go ahead.
His argument a lot of the time was just that like men build stuff. So
no, literally, and it's like I'm so sorry. If you think when they were building the pyramids, they were like, sorry, if you're a femoid, you cannot haul giant blocks to the place where we're building them. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's way more of a class thing than it is a gender sex thing. But on top of that, there's an added layer that, traditionally speaking, over the past 6,000 years, there's been a pretty strong bent in most areas against women. But it's very telling that it's not complete, right? Like, it varies depending on where you were. If you were an Egyptian woman, you had way more rights than if you were in early dynasties in China, if memory serves. So it's like, But yeah, that's just really funny to me as well. I just recently learned that one of the targets for the Manhattan Project was a Swedish woman who I believe she was pretty critical on like the fission discovery, I think. And it's like she turned it down because it turns out, was actually an X-ray technician during World War I, and she was like, "I will have nothing to do with the bomb. I'm really sorry. That's not going to be for me." Of course, they had her as an X-ray technician who had a PhD in physics, right? And is like, but they needed all hands on deck. It's funny how that works. You don't really care about the gender or sex of a person when it's all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wild. Absolutely wild.
Oh, I think we missed that last one.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we read that. $10 from Cool Granddaddy Sweets Forever. That's an amazing thing.
Nice.
I thank science for tribalism and competitiveness. If I wasn't a girl dad for the last 35 plus years, I probably would sound like John still. Man good. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Man good, woman bad. Thanks to my culture's machismo. Love the show. Yay! Thank you.
It's interesting how, like, you know, you meet dads with daughters and they're just like, by and large these days especially, they're like, I actually can't believe that the world is as misogynistic as it is. And then you have the minute amount of them that are like, ooh, we use that opportunity to double down. So thank you for being a great father to your kids. Cool Granddaddy Sweets Forever.
$5 from Jonathan. Damn, I used to be a Peterson fan. Don't get pulled in by his flowery language mates. Facts.
I wish I would have thought of making, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars by telling people to make their bed. Like, I wish that I would have thought about it. So, like, the 12 rules for life, my understanding is, like, by and large, they're totally fine. It's, like, intuitive shit. And then it's, like, he sneaks the extra, the woman is the chaos dragon in there. Everything else.
The chaos dragon. It's so good. Oh my gosh. All right, $20 from M68 Ken. I don't know if I should have read that any differently. I apologize if I was. Regarding the conversation with John, I'm a software engineer, and that his perspective reminds me of when someone else tells me that my code is broken. The first thought that often comes to mind is, "Nuh-uh, it worked fine for me." Yeah. Exactly.
No,
exactly.
that was a great point by Alyssa, was that it was like, yeah, you I'm sure you do think it works fine. When has it ever harmed you?
I was kind of like, is that not a moment of reflection in and of itself, that you're the one who's telling us that it works fine for everybody, but you know that you're the one who's benefiting from it? Like, hello?
Exactly. $5 from Terrible Liar. Erika, I asked you a while back to give me strength on my phylogenetics related dissertation, and now I'm defending in August. Praise to my God, Erika. Excellent, Terrible Liar. I wish you the best of luck. I don't know what taxa you're working with, but I really, really hope that it goes well. And just remember, odds are you know more about that very niche topic that you're giving a presentation on than your advisors do, because you just spent the past several years reading about it. So have confidence in yourself and you'll kill it. Okay, $4.99 from Newbert Newman. Lovejoy 2009. Ardipithecus indicated that humans developed bipedalism because of increased cooperation. John needs to take more physical anthropology. Yeah, I think everybody needs to take more physical anthropology or bioanth in general. Because you will see how quickly, like, if you look at past hominins or the rest of the primates that we share the world with, you will see how fast the alpha male patriarchy, natural and good narrative falls to pieces. Like, you will just see how many different ways there are to do it, and where we can go from here, I think. So I totally agree. And Ardipithecus is actually my favorite hominin, incidentally.
$9.99 from Poor Claire. Mere loneliness exists because we used to have a socialist dating market and it switched to free market. I don't feel sorry for them because now they have to actually be likable or pay us, period. Poor Claire. Yes. Now they actually have to be likable. Unbelievable.
That's so crazy. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, when you're like trying to woo somebody who actually has their own bank account, you have to have more to give than, you know, a decent salary. That's wild how that works.
Yes, exactly.
$5 from Nathan, I think. Erika, love your YouTube channel. Alyssa, do you have one? Great show. Yes, Alyssa, do you have a YouTube channel? I need to subscribe if you do.
I do, but I don't really post much on there, but I should. I'm going to get into it this year, and I'll actually share some more stuff. But I always am posting on my Instagram and my TikTok, and it's at Alyssa Ljub, ALYSSALJUB. But I would love to post more on YouTube. If anyone ever has suggestions for what exactly they would want me to share on YouTube, send me a little message on Instagram, and that would be really helpful, because these algorithms are not very kind to people who want to talk about sexuality. So I have to be like a little careful with what I share. So any guidance that you have is helpful. And I'll take this also as an opportunity to share. I also have a platform where I share sex education every single week, and it's called Passion and Alchemy, and it's just passionandalchemy.com. And every single week we do some fun sex ed stuff, and it's a grand old time. I'm going to be doing a blowjob workshop on there soon. So
Oh my God.
my parents are so proud.
$5 from Lynn Fisher. I'm easy to make blush, so I'm just like, oh my goodness. $5 from Lynn Fisher. Don't dominant male chimpanzees achieve dominance by glad handing the females of the troop. Okay, see, this is my naivete showing. Glad handing. What does that mean?
Oh, I don't know. Glad handing.
Is that because that could be schmoozing, or it could be physically harming, because they actually do both. Male chimpanzees can be pretty brutal to females sometimes.
This says being very friendly, but
schmoozing
it
method.
says like, yeah, the schmoozing method. Yeah, it says like especially of a politician. So I guess schmoozing feels like it would be a good.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the main ways they do it is in chimpanzees. Males typically will hunt more than females do. Not to the exclusion of females, but just more often. And the reason is because they can do it as a group, whereas females don't have as tight knit relationships as males do with one another. Which is why in bonobos females hunt more often than they do in chimpanzees, if memory serves. But as a result, when females hunt, they usually hunt alone. And when males hunt, they usually hunt in groups. And so one way that they will schmooze with the females is they will share meat that they have acquired with females that they're hoping to get busy with later. And then they'll have these consortships behind the back of the alpha male just in case he might get upset. Although chimpanzees are pretty promiscuous. That's the word that you use for it in primatology. We're moving away from it for obvious reasons, but that's the word that I was taught. Multi-male, multi-female, everybody's banging everybody is the way to.
I love it.
But bonobos are super schmoozy as well. And in bonobos, you got to be even schmoozier if you're a male, because the females, like the lowest ranking female, basically gets to feed before like the higher ranking males, and so as a result, they got to schmooze, and they got to schmooze hard. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Okay, $5 from Mahalia? Iaga? I'm so bad at for a person who has a crazy last name like I do, I am not great at pronouncing names, so I apologize in advance. For those who don't know about coins, on the line, insert a coin. That chosen host is to give a fun/favorite random fact. Insert Erika coin and Alyssa coin. Okay. A fun or random fact. Oh, how about 97% of Americans in a survey of over 4,000 people that was done in, I think, 2017, reported that they have sexual fantasies, and only 1/3 of them actually acted on those fantasies. And those fantasies range from all different kinds of things. But it was something like 93% of the women surveyed had fantasized about domination, being dominated or dominating. So that's my fun fact for today. Yeah, I'm
gonna go with one that I read recently in Immense World by Young, which is that snakes have forked tongues so that they can smell stereoscopically, so that they can directionally smell in the same way that having two eyes gives you depth perception. They basically get directionality and depth perception by having a forked tongue, which is really cool.
That's wild. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
$5 from Raven Lockhart. I heard female apes will cause a miscarriage when new males are introduced. Could this be a good example in support of abortion? Love the show. A great many animals will either spontaneously abort or I don't, it's hard to say how much consciousness is involved in it. Usually the argument goes that it's like a pheromonal thing, but like bears do it when they don't get enough nutrition. If they're pregnant, they will terminate the pregnancy because they, believe it or not, the individual will prioritize the health of itself over basically dying in order to provide for offspring that is also going to die the moment it's born because it won't have a parent to care for it. This is very common across the animal kingdom. So in the case of females that will miscarry in the presence of new males, this is typically done to prevent infanticide. So it's basically like, okay, like if I have this kid, the new male's going to know it's not his, and he's going to increase his chances of getting with me by committing infanticide. And so spontaneous abortion when new males come into the troop is a strategy that some females of some primates have to reduce infanticide and increase their own fitness. In a way, it is a massive amount of female choice and male coercion, believe it or not. It's considered both in primatology. So it's an interesting thought process, but there are aspects of human physiology that, interestingly enough, also increase female choice. So like the fact that human females don't visibly go into estrus, right? So like when we're ovulating, no one knows. Right? Sometimes we barely know, but it's like, it's concealed so that the males who are around you can't actually tell when you're ovulating or not. So it increases female choice because the story goes, and this is a little bit evolutionary psych for my taste. I don't know that you can necessarily show this to be the case, but the argument goes that it increases female choice because they can get with a male that they really like for his parental behavior and potentially sneak behind his back to get with a male with ideal physical characteristics that might not be as good of a father. That's the idea anyways.
Wild. Okay, $5 from Emery King. Can some red pill person please explain to me the difference between sleeping with 100 different men one time versus one man? Sleeping with 100 different men versus one man sleeping with 100 different women. Does the vagina know? No, it doesn't. No.
Wow,
the vagina doesn't know. There is no biological difference between a vagina that has had sex and has not. Over time, we all lose collagen, just like in our skin and in our tissues. And so things will like loosen up and change, especially if like you have children. That's a whole different process than having sex. But everything else in your vulva and your vaginal canal will stay pretty much the same that it would have if you had stayed a virgin for that same period of time. So the vagina doesn't know. And that's why slut doesn't mean anything. And there's no such thing as having too much sex as long as it was consensual and you know the drill. All of that good stuff. You know?
I know.
$10 from Richmond dies. As a father of a Black woman, I cannot believe the damage that endocrine disruptors were in hair products, especially for Black people, have done in the female population. I didn't know that there were that many in hair products.
That's so cool. I didn't know that either. That's horrible.
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's so frustrating. And I feel like in general, people were not really paying attention to that kind of stuff until recently.
Of course,
it's unfortunate, but we have to have so much agency and like really insist on things being better quality or better managed better. I don't even know. It's just a hot mess. But thank you, Richmond, for your super chat.
$5 for Monkey to Typewriter. Do you know if gibbons have complex courtship rituals? I'm wondering if they build a complex mating relationship or if it's more of a see and bang. No, it's a complex deal. Because any type of pair bonding species, because it's like, okay, you're picking one mate to stay with for a lot of your life, even if they're serially monogamous or serially pair bonded, it's like you're still spending a lot of time with that individual. So So you really got to impress the one that you're trying to get with, whether that's TD monkeys or marmosets, specific marmosets, or gibbons or humans. You got to really put your best foot forward to impress the individual that you want to have be your mate. And so in gibbons, it's complex singing. They're singers, which is so cute. I love gibbons are my favorite for a reason. They're
That's really
adorable.
cute.
I love how cute they are. I love how funny they are. I love how egalitarian they are. They're great. But yeah, males and females both engage, and when they're in their little pair bonded relationship or initiating it, they do these duets to each other to basically announce to everybody around, this is our zone. Don't come into our zone. We're thinking about getting together. And then if they get together, they do that duet at the beginning of every day. So they go to the tippy tops of the trees and they do their duet. And that duet literally means like, don't fuck with us. Like we're a power couple. Don't come into our area or we'll mess you up. And like, there's a reason males and females and gibbons both have huge canine teeth. And it's because they both fight in their territory to keep it their territory and to protect their little offspring, who then they kick out when they reach a certain age, regardless of the sex of the offspring. So gibbons are awesome. I think they're so interesting. And they're apes.
It's like a combination. It's like a combination of like High School Musical and Fight Club.
Literally,
I love it.
Literally, that's what it is. And their singing is like so cute. I don't know. I love it. They do these little hoots and hollers. It's adorable.
It's so funny. $5 from Ann Clark. My girlfriend is 35 years old. Can't get her tubes tied without written consent from her husband. So disturbing. Like
archaic.
It's giving Handmaid's Tale. It literally is giving Handmaid's Tale.
That's just insane to me. It's just insane.
That's really common though, that there are a lot of doctors who just like don't want to do any sort of sterilization procedures for women, which why would you do that? And if you go sometime in your 20s especially and you ask them, a lot of doctors will straight up be like, I'm not doing that because you might change your mind. And then there are women who are like, I simply will not. I will not. And that's also the consequence of my own actions. Like, what the fuck? Makes me so angry.
I've also seen ones where they'll be like, yeah, we won't do it unless you've had 2 kids. Like it's like that's like, even weirder to me. Like you can do it on your own volition as long as you meet the replacement rate for humans. It's like that's so weird. That's so weird. I don't like that at all.
So disturbing. So disturbing. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Alyssa, don't undersell the juiciness of your brain. Okay, I won't. Also, have you shown Erika the Velveteen Rabbit? Velveteen Rabbit. That's what we've named the vulva pillow.
So cute.
It has some anatomical correct pieces in here. I mean, obviously it's a pillow,
wow.
so but you know. Wonderful show with 2 juicy brained hosts. Thank you so much.
Epic. All right, last one, I believe. $5 no, wait. I think Jonathan's our last one. $5 from SJL. I had a root canal done without any painkiller. I'm a manly man. Actually, the nerve is already dead. I felt nothing. That would
That's
be
lucky.
insane. If someone was like, do this root canal with no painkillers, you would be like, no, please don't make me do this. That's crazy to even propose. But they'll sound your cervix without a second thought. It's crazy.
Yup.
Oh, that was the last one.
Oh, that's our last super chat. Okay, well, I wanted to make sure I don't miss any of my little announcements because I already forgot to tell everyone to go to the Patreon, which is patreon.com/calltheline. And I want to tell you about the shows that we have coming up later this week. Tomorrow we have is tomorrow Wednesday? Yeah, it is. Okay, so tomorrow we have the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty, Nick Fish. And we have on Thursday the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Arden Hart and Dr. Ben. And what else? We need to say thank you to all of our wonderful mods, and we can thank our screener too. Let's see who is screening us today. Boop, 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 boo. Jess. Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate it. And Amargan as always, who was producing the show today. Thank you so much. Oh, name suggestion for the pillow. Mulva the Vulva. It's really cute. My boyfriend is a big Seinfeld fan, so he'll appreciate that.
There you go.
Thank you, Erika, for coming on today. Everyone here knows you more than they know me, so I would tell you to plug your stuff. and you should actually plug your stuff for anybody who's new, who's seeing you for the very first time, which would be shocking.
You can subscribe to Guts a Gibbon. That is my YouTube channel. I talk about a lot of stuff, and we monkey around, constantly over there. I like to get into fights with people over there, so it's a good time. Subscribe, like, comment. That's all free. Which, speaking of which, if you like what we do here on The Line, hey, subscribe and like this video and leave a comment. And if you can't think of any comment to leave, then you can just, what should we ask them to leave? What are you dying to know from our audience here? Alyssa, what do you want to know?
Okay, this is a really random one, but I need to know, there's something that has been brought to my attention that we call the beautiful house theory, which is when you see someone who is so attractive that you're not attracted to them anymore. So, for instance, they call it the beautiful house theory because when you're driving and you see a house and it's like so beautiful, and you just go, it's a beautiful house, but you don't look it up on Zillow. You don't want to know how many bedrooms it has. You're like, and then you just keep driving and you don't think about it again. So, like, for instance, Chris Hemsworth, for me, beautiful house. I'm aware that he's like a very attractive man. I am not attracted to him at all. So I would like to know who everybody's beautiful house people are, because I think that's the funniest question.
Okay, yeah, tell us who your beautiful house is, please. Yeah. And oh shoot, I think that's actually it. That's all I've got. Yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Join Patreon. It's gonna be great, and we'll see you next time.
And we have our Patreon dance is this way.
You're right there. You're right there. You're right there.
Thank you to all of our patrons and to everybody who helped run the show today, our mods and our producer and our crew and Erika. So happy you came on. I learned so much.
I learned from you as well. But make sure you guys